Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Hid Behind the Visor? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Chapter 1. Chapter text. The roar of the motorcycle was a sound Izuku Midoriya craved more than oxygen. It was a physical thing, a vibration that started in the handlebars and traveled up his arms, rattling his bones and silencing the constant, buzzing hum of his own thoughts. On the back of his bike, he wasn't Izuku. He was a streak of green and black, a ghost on the highway, a man made of pure momentum. He pulled into the designated lot, the engine's final growl echoing off the concrete walls of the surrounding buildings. He killed the ignition, and the sudden silence was almost louder than the roar. Swinging a leg off the bike, he pulled off his helmet, shaking out a mess of dark green curls. He ran a hand through them, a habitual, self-conscious gesture that was at odds with the figure he cut astride the powerful machine. He was early. The late afternoon sun cast long, lazy shadows across the asphalt. He had time. Slinging his backpack over one shoulder, he began the short walk to the UA University dorms, his posture already beginning to curl in on itself, his steps becoming less of a confident stride and more of a shuffle. The transformation was unconscious, a practiced shift from one skin to another. The common room was a controlled explosion of noise and energy, exactly as he'd left it that morning. It smelled of microwaved popcorn, fabric softener, and the faint, ever-present scent of Katsuki's nitroglycerin sweat, a spicy, smoky odor that Izuku's brain had long ago categorized as home. Deku, you're back. Achiko Uraraka chirped from her perch on the largest sofa, her feet tucked under her. She was surrounded by textbooks that looked like they weighed more than she did. Hey, Achiko, Izuku said, offering a small, genuine smile. He dropped his bag by the door and made a beeline for the kitchen. Midoriya. Excellent timing. We are commencing a group study session for Professor Aizawa's Modern Hero Ethics exam in precisely 30 minutes. Tenya Ida announced, his voice carrying the percussive force of a judge's gavel. He stood near the coffee maker, chopping the air with robotic precision. Wouldn't miss it, Izuku mumbled, already rooting through the fridge for a drink. His eyes landed on the last bottle of strawberry milk. A large, calloused hand shot past his face and snatched the bottle. My nerd. Izuku didn't need to turn around. His spine knew that voice. It did a thing, a little involuntary shiver that he hoped to God wasn't visible. He straightened up and turned, leaning against the fridge door. Katsuki Bakugo stood there, already cracking the seal on the bottle. He was still in his practice gear from the UA Titans football team, mud-streaked crimson pants and a black compression shirt that did absolutely nothing to hide the ridiculous topography of his chest and shoulders. His hair, spiky and ashen blonde, was damp with sweat, and his sharp, red eyes were fixed on Izuku with their usual mixture of annoyance and something else. Something Izuku had been trying to decode since they were 5. You didn't even want that, Izuku said, his voice drier than he intended. The persona he shed at the door always seemed to leave a little residue, a film of sarcasm that was his first line of defense against Katsuki Bakugo. You think it's too fucking sweet. Katsuki took a long, deliberate swig, his Adam's apple bobbing. He lowered the bottle, a faint pink mustache on his upper lip that was so incongruously cute on his scowling face it made Izuku's chest hurt. Changed my mind. My fucking milk now. Problem? It's a tragedy of immeasurable proportions. However will I recover? Izuku deadpanned, pushing off the fridge and grabbing a water bottle instead. Katsuki's eyes narrowed. The fuck's with you today? You're extra little shittish. Just matching your energy, Kaken. The old childhood nickname slipped out, a habit he couldn't break. It sounded different now, less like a taunt and more like a secret. Before Katsuki could retort, and he always had a retort, Denki Kaminari vaulted over the back of the couch, landing in a heap. Is he being a little shit? I love when he's a little shit. It's like a puppy that suddenly learns how to cuss. I am not a puppy, Izuku sighed, though the effect was ruined by the way he almost tripped over a stray throw pillow. "You kinda are," Hitoshi Shinso drawled from his customary spot slouched in an armchair, looking perpetually 3 seconds from a nap. His purple hair was a mess, and his eyes tracked Kaminari with weary fondness. A very smart, very mouthy puppy that collects all might memorabilia like a magpie on amphetamines. "Hey, my collection is tasteful," Izuku protested, his voice pitching higher. And just like that, the last vestiges of his other self were gone, swallowed by the comfortable, familiar dynamic of his friends. He was just Izuku again. Clumsy, nerdy, hopelessly infatuated with his childhood friend Izuku. Katsuki grunted, a sound of supreme dismissal, and shoved the half-finished bottle of strawberry milk back into Izuku's hand. "Tastes like shit anyway." He stomped off towards the stairs, presumably to shower off the practice grime. Izuku stared at the bottle, warmth spreading from where Katsuki's fingers had just been. It was a ritual. Katsuki would take something, declare it his, then give it back. It was infuriating. It made Izuku's heart do backflips. "He's such a gentleman," Mina Ashido sighed dramatically, applying a fresh coat of neon pink polish to her nails. She wiggled her eyebrows at Izuku. "So chivalrous. Sharing his spoils with you." "Shut the fuck up, raccoon eyes." Katsuki's voice bellowed from the stairwell. Eijiro Kirishima just laughed, sharp-toothed and bright. "He's a manly softy, dude. You know he bought that yesterday because he saw it was the last one and you weren't here." Izuku felt his cheeks heat. He took a sip of the milk. It did taste fucking sweet. Perfect. 3 hours later, the study session had devolved into chaos. Ida was having a meltdown over the group's collective inability to focus. Shoto Todoroki was silently and methodically eating a bowl of soba noodles while staring at a diagram of ethical frameworks as if it had personally offended him, and Kaminari was trying to balance a textbook on his head. Izuku's phone buzzed in his pocket. A specific, custom vibration. His manager's new track dropped. Trendin'. Beat is stupid fire. Need a concept vid by Friday. You free tonight? Izuku's blood thrummed with a different kind of energy. This was it. The call. "Izuku, send it. I'm on it." He stood up, stretching. "Guys, I'm beat. Gonna hit the hay early." "But Midoriya. It is only 2100 hours. The pinnacle of nocturnal academic productivity." Ida protested, adjusting his glasses. "Dude, you look wiped," Kirishima said not unkindly. "Get some rest." Yeah, we'll fill you in," Achiko said, waving a hand. "Your notes are already, 10 times better than the textbook anyway." Izuku offered a weak smile, gathering his things. As he turned, his eyes caught Katsuki's. Katsuki wasn't studying. He was leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, watching Izuku with an unervingly focused expression. He didn't say anything. Just looked. As if he could see the lie written in the tense line of Izuku's shoulders. Izuku gave a little, awkward wave and practically fled to his room. The moment his door was locked, the persona slammed back into place. He moved with a new purpose, pulling a large, locked trunk from under his bed. Inside was the costume, his armor. Black, leather-like pants that hugged every line of his thighs and ass. A dark green, sleeveless hoodie made of a breathable, expensive material, the hood large and deep. A collection of chains and leather straps for his wrists. And the helmet. Sleek, black, with a tinted visor that hid everything. He changed quickly, the clothes feeling both alien and more natural than his baggy sweaters and jeans. He shoved his curls under a black do-rag before pulling the helmet on. In the full-length mirror on his door, a stranger stared back. Someone taller, broader, dangerous. Someone who didn't stammer or trip over his own feet. Deku was the persona. The online sensation. The one who drove a motorcycle and danced like sex on legs. This was the real him. The one he hid from everyone, especially Katsuki. He waited until the dorm was quiet, until he heard the last goodnights echo in the hall. Slipping out his window and onto the fire escape was second nature. He was a ghost, descending into the night. The studio was a rented space 20 minutes away, a small, soundproofed room with a wall of mirrors and a professional-grade camera setup. He plugged his phone into the speaker system, and the new track filled the room. It was a deep, bass-heavy thing, a syncopated rhythm that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was, as his manager had said, stupid fire. He listened to it once, twice, 3 times, his body already moving, mapping the beats, finding the story in the music. This was his language. This was where he was fluent. He set the camera to record. And then he danced. It wasn't just movement. It was a narrative. It started slow, a lazy, almost arrogant roll of his hips, a prowl across the floor. His body isolations were razor-sharp, every pop and lock a punctuation mark. Then the beat dropped, and he exploded into motion. It was powerful, athletic, all-controlled strength and breathtaking flexibility. He moved between sheer, raw power and a sensual, liquid grace that was hypnotic. He poured everything into it. The frustration of the day, the confusing push and pull with Katsuki, the constant pressure of maintaining the lie. It all melted in the heat of the studio lights, channeled into something beautiful and fierce. He ended the routine on his knees, chest heaving, one hand braced on the floor, the other dragging slowly down the front of his hoodie, his head bowed. The final, defiant note echoed into silence. He held the pose for a beat longer, then slumped, breathing hard. He was drenched in sweat. It was perfect. He knew it was. He uploaded the raw file to his manager, stripped off the soaking hoodie, and grabbed a towel. As he mopped his face, his personal phone buzzed. It was a text from Katsuki. "Kei, where are you?" Izuku's heart stopped. He stared at the screen. How did he know? Had he heard him leave? Izuku, my room? Asleep? But the 3 dots appeared, bounced, disappeared, appeared again. Izuku held his breath. Kei, your light was on. Under your door. Saw it go off just now. He'd forgotten to turn his bedroom light off as a decoy. It was a basic part of his routine, and he'd been so amped up from the dance he'd forgotten. Izuku, just reading. Fell asleep with it on. Woke up and turned it off. Everything okay? The pause was interminable. Kei, whatever. Night nerd. Izuku, night, Kaken. Izuku sank onto the floor, his back against the mirror. His hands were shaking. That was too close. He pulled up the TikTok app, navigating to his secret account. At Deku_. 6.7 million followers. His feed was a barrage of notifications. Comments on his last video, which was already 2 days old. User 38472, I would sell my soul for him to step on me. Deku for life. The way he moves, it's not human. It's art. Lilac dreams, but who is he? The mystery is killing me. He scrolled, a hollow feeling in his gut. 6.7 million people adored a ghost. They loved a fiction. And the one person he actually wanted to see him, to really see him, only ever saw the clumsy, nervous boy in baggy clothes. He thought of Katsuki's text. The observation. Katsuki always noticed. He noticed when Izuku was tired, when he was faking a smile, when he skipped a meal. He noticed the light under his door. It was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. He changed back into his normal clothes, the soft cotton feeling like a betrayal after the leather. He stowed his gear and headed back to the dorms, slipping through his window like a thief. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed one last time. It was a notification from TikTok. His manager had already posted the video. The algorithm was doing its work. He ignored it. Instead, he opened his camera roll, scrolling to a hidden folder. It was a picture from last summer at the beach. Kirishima had taken it. Katsuki was mid-laugh, head thrown back, the sun catching the red of his eyes, one arm slung around Izuku's neck, pulling him into a rough, half-headlock. Izuku was grinning, bright and unguarded, his cheeks smushed against Katsuki's side. He looked at the picture until his eyes grew heavy. The last thing he thought before sleep took him was that the 6.7 million likes he'd probably wake up to wouldn't feel half as good as Katsuki's arm around him had in that moment. Chapter 2. The Echo of a Viral Beat. Chapter text. The video blew the fuck up. Izuku knew it would. He'd felt it in his bones, in the satisfying ache of his muscles the next morning. But knowing and experiencing were two very different things. By the time he dragged himself out of bed, bleary-eyed and still exhausted from his late night, his manager had already sent 7 increasingly ecstatic texts. S. DKU. Dude. S. It's a 2 mil views in 4 hours. S. The comments are unhinged. S. Brands are sliding into my DMs. What is happening? S. This is the one. I'm telling you. This is the vid that crosses you over. Asterisk S. Also, someone made a slow-mo edit of that hip roll thing you do at 047. My grandma saw it and called me. She's concerned for my soul. Asterisk S. Check your damn messages, you glorious bastard. Izuku scrolled through the notifications with a detached sense of surrealism. The numbers were staggering. The comments were a torrent of lust, admiration, and wild speculation. He should have been elated. This was everything he'd worked for in secret for years. Instead, he felt a strange, hollow anxiety. The bigger at Deku got, the harder the eventual fall would be. The more people who adored the Phantom, the more devastating it would be when they found out he was just Izuku. He shoved his phone deep into his pocket and headed for the communal showers, hoping the hot water would wash away the weird feeling. No such luck. The moment he stepped into the steamy room, he was met with the source of half his anxiety. Katsuki Bakugo was already there, standing under a spray of water, one arm braced against the tiles. The muscles of his back and shoulders shifted and flexed under skin flushed pink from the heat. Water sluiced down the defined lines of his spine, disappearing into the towel slung low on his hips. He was a sculpture carved from tension and raw power. Izuku's breath hitched. He quickly moved to the showerhead farthest away, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He kept his eyes firmly on the floor, on the drain, on his own stupid, pale feet, anywhere but on the living, breathing wet dream 3 showers down. You look like shit. The gruff voice cut through the steam and the sound of running water. Izuku jumped, fumbling his bottle of shampoo. Clattered loudly against the ceramic floor. Good morning to you too, Kaken, Izuku stammered, cursing the immediate regression to a flustered mess. So much for the residue of confidence. Didn't sleep? Katsuki asked. He wasn't looking at Izuku. His head was tilted back under the spray, rinsing shampoo from his hair. Not really, Izuku admitted, lathering up his own curls. I had trouble turning my brain off. Shin, a non-committal grunt. Then, saw that video everyone's losing their shit over this morning. Izuku froze, his hands still in his hair. A cold dread, entirely separate from the shower's spray, washed over him. He knows. How does he know? Did he see me? Video. That dancing fucker. The one with the bike and the helmet. Katsuki shut off his water with a sharp twist of the knob. The sudden silence was deafening. He grabbed his towel, scrubbing it over his face and hair. Denki would not shut up about it at breakfast. Apparently, it's the hottest thing to ever happen to the internet. He said the last part in a perfect, mocking imitation of Kaminari's voice. The relief was so potent it made Izuku's knees weak. He leaned against the cool tile wall. Oh, that. Yeah, I think Mina showed me once. The lie tasted like ash. Katsuki finally looked at him, red eyes sharp and assessing even through the steam. It's fucking stupid. Izuku's pride, the part that was at Deku prickled. What is? The video. The whole thing. The mystery. The fucking antics. Katsuki wrapped the towel around his waist and started gathering his things. All that talent and he's hiding behind a mask. It's cowardly. If you're gonna be that good at something, own it. Don't play fucking peekaboo with the entire planet. The words hit Izuku like physical blows. Cowardly. He felt his face heat, a mixture of anger and shame. Maybe he has his reasons, he said, his voice tighter than he meant it to be. Katsuki paused at the door, glancing back. He looked, almost surprised by the tone. Whatever. Still stupid. Dude probably has a face like a squashed grape. He shoved the door open. Hurry up, dude. Four Eyes is having a fucking aneurysm over the study guide. The door swung shut behind him, leaving Izuku alone in the suddenly cold steam. He stood there for a long time, the water beating down on him. Coward. Stupid. A face like a squashed grape. He turned the water to ice cold and let it shock the hurt away. The common room was, indeed, a vortex of eater-induced panic and viral video hype. And the sheer artistry of the movement. Kaminari was saying, waving his phone around. It's not just dancing, it's like emotional warfare. My emotions are under attack. I feel things. You feel the need to be incredibly loud before noon, that's what you feel, Shinso muttered from his blanket cocoon on the couch, though he was watching Kaminari's flailing with clear affection. No, Kami's right. Mina chirped, snatching the phone from him. She held it up for the group. Look at this part. The control. The power. Who is he? Achiko leaned in, her eyes wide. Oh wow. He's really good. His spatial awareness and bodily kinetics are exceptionally advanced, Ida conceded, chopping a hand thoughtfully. Though I must question the practicality of such a skill set outside of entertainment. Izuku hovered at the edge of the group, feeling like a ghost observing his own seance. He stuffed his hands into the pockets of his oversized hoodie, shrinking into himself. It's a viral video, a bored voice drawled from the kitchen. Shoto Todoroki was meticulously making tea, not even looking up. There will be another one next week featuring a cat that can open doors. It is the natural cycle of the internet. But this is different, Todoroki. Mina insisted. This is Deku. He's been around for ages, but this video, it's different. It's bigger. Hearing his online name on her lips sent another jolt of surreal anxiety through him. It's a bunch of people getting horny over a guy in a helmet, Katsuki's voice growled from behind Izuku, making him jump. Katsuki shoved past him, freshly dressed and smelling faintly of his spicy, explosive scent and clean soap. He dropped onto an armchair, kicking his feet up on the coffee table. It's pathetic, says the guy who gets 1,000 thirst comments every time the UA Titans post a team pic, Kirishima pointed out with a laugh, nudging Katsuki's boot with his foot. That's different, Katsuki snapped, though a faint flush crept up his neck. That's just shitty football fans being shitty. This is orchestrated. It's a performance. It's fake. It's not fake, Izuku wanted to scream. The dancing is the most real thing about me. Instead, he mumbled, I think it's impressive. All eyes turned to him. He flinched under the sudden attention. Katsuki raised an eyebrow. Since when do you know anything about dancing, nerd? Izuku's mind went blank. I mean the rhythm? And the physical discipline required? He was digging his own grave, stammering like an idiot. Thank God for Kaminari. See, even Midoriya gets it. It's about the discipline. The raw, untamed vibe. He struck a pose that was probably supposed to be reminiscent of the video but looked more like he was being electrocuted. Shinso sighed deeply. I'm revoking your internet privileges. As the debate raged on, Izuku slipped away to the kitchen for a glass of water. He was pouring it when Achiko appeared at his elbow. You okay, Deku? She asked softly, using the childhood nickname that felt safe and familiar on her lips. You seem kinda out of it today. Just tired, he said, offering her a weak smile. Didn't sleep well. Because of the video? She asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. What? Why would? It's okay, she giggled, lowering her voice. I won't tell anyone. It is kinda hot. I may or may not have watched it, like, 5 times. Izuku choked on his water. This was a new and special kind of hell. His best friend had a crush on his secret identity. Of course she did. It's something he managed to cough out. I just want to know who he is, she sighed dreamily. He could be anyone. Could be, I don't know, that quiet guy from our calculus class. Or even Kaken. This time, Izuku did a full spit take, spraying water all over the counter. Kaken? He wheezed, images of Katsuki attempting the sensual, fluid moves from his video flashing in his mind. It was equal parts horrifying and bizarrely arousing. Katsuki moved with explosive, aggressive power. Graceful, yes, but in the way a panther was graceful. Not like that. Well, why not? Achiko said, grabbing a paper towel to help him clean up. He's got the body for it. And the attitude. Can you imagine? The mystery biker dude being our resident Pomeranian? The internet would explode. I'm gonna explode, Izuku muttered, mopping up the water. The idea was ludicrous. Katsuki, who had just 5 minutes ago called the whole thing pathetic and cowardly. He chanced a glance into the living room. Katsuki was slouched in the chair, scrolling through his phone with a scowl. As if feeling the weight of Izuku's gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the room. Katsuki's scowl deepened, but he didn't look away. He never did. He held Izuku's gaze with an intensity that made the air in Izuku's lungs feel thin. He could be anyone, Achiko had said, but he would never, ever be Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki would never hide. He would never create something beautiful and secret. Would stand in the center of the stage, barefaced and screaming his own name, and dare the world to look away. Izuku was the one who hid. He was the coward. He looked away first, his cheeks burning. The rest of the day was a special kind of torture. Everywhere he went, someone was talking about the video. It was on the campus-wide meme page. A group of girls in the library were gathered around a phone, watching it and giggling. His own secret was screaming at him from every corner, and he had to just smile and nod like it had nothing to do with him. By the time evening rolled around, he was crawling out of his skin. He needed to move. He needed to be Deku again, if only to remind himself why he was doing this. He waited until the dorm was quiet, until the familiar sounds of video games and bickering had faded. He went through his ritual, the do-rag, the clothes, the helmet. The transformation was a relief, like slipping into a second skin that fit better than the first. He didn't go to the studio. He needed air. He needed speed. He rode for over an hour, aimlessly, letting the city lights blur into streaks of color. The wind was a roar that drowned out everything, Achiko's giggles, Kaminari's exclamations, Katsuki's voice calling him a coward. Eventually, he found himself at the same secluded lookout point he often went to think. It overlooked the city, the lights twinkling like a spilled box of jewels. He killed the engine, pulled off his helmet, and just breathed. His phone buzzed. His manager again. They want you for a collab. No shit. Dynamite. Izuku's blood ran cold. Dynamite. The hottest music producer of the year. A genius known for his brutal, hard-hitting tracks and his even more brutal, anonymous online persona. He never showed his face, never did interviews. His branding was all aggressive, stylized kanji and imagery of explosions. He was the only online entity whose mystique rivaled at Dekundersus. And he wanted to collaborate. Izuku, what? His people reached out. He saw the vid. He's a fan. He's got a new track. He wants you to be the face of it. The premiere choreography. Izuku, that's huge. It's fucking monumental. This isn't brand deals, kid. This is the big leagues. This is art recognizing art. Izuku, when? They're sending the track tomorrow. They want a concept pitch by the end of the week. Izuku's head was spinning. A collaboration with Dynamite. It was everything. It was the validation he'd never known he needed. His phone buzzed again. A different notification. A text. K, where the hell are you now? Izuku stared at the screen. The timing was fucking eerie. It was like Katsuki had a sixth sense for when Izuku was towing the line of his secret life. He looked out at the city lights, then down at the two conversations on his screen. One with his manager, offering him a dream collaboration with the legendary artist. One with Katsuki, asking a simple question he couldn't truthfully answer. He was standing on the precipice of two worlds, and the gap between them was widening into a chasm. He typed a reply to Katsuki, his fingers feeling numb. Izuku, couldn't sleep. Went for a walk. Clear my head. K, it's 1 a.m. Izuku, I know. K, you're a fucking weirdo. Izuku, the three dots appeared. Izuku waited, his heart in his throat. He willed Katsuki to say something else. To ask him to come back. To tell him it was stupid to walk around so late. Anything. Whatever. Don't get yourself murdered. I'm not giving your fucking All Might collection to Four Eyes. A laugh, startled and wet, escaped Izuku's lips. It was so quintessentially Kaken. A threat wrapped around a concern, delivered with profanity. He looked back at his manager's message. Dynamite. He made a decision. Izuku, send the track. I'm in. Chapter 3, The Collab and the Common Room Catastrophe. Chapter text. The track from Dynamite's people hit Izuku's inbox at 8 a.m. the next morning. He downloaded it with a reverence usually reserved for sacred texts, plugged in his noise-canceling headphones, and pressed play. It was a masterpiece. It was also a fucking assault. It started with the sound of a single, echoing heartbeat that quickly multiplied into a war drum cadence. Then a synth, deep and distorted, sliced through the silence like a razor. It built, layer upon layer of aggressive, complex percussion and a bass line that felt like it was physically punching him in the chest. It wasn't music to dance to, it was music to start a revolution to. It was furious, powerful, and utterly, devastatingly beautiful. The halfway mark dropped into a brief, haunting melody, a few seconds of crystalline, sorrowful notes, before exploding back into a finale of pure, unadulterated rage that left Izuku breathless. It was the musical embodiment of Katsuki Bakubu. The thought was unbidden and left him reeling. He shook his head, trying to dislodge it. This was Dynamite, an enigmatic genius. Not his emotionally constipated, football-playing childhood friend. But the connection stuck. The raw power, the hidden thread of something softer beneath the fury, it felt familiar. For 3 days, Izuku lived and breathed the track. He listened to it while eating, in between classes, and even in his dreams. Choreography ideas flickered behind his eyes constantly, sharp, aggressive movements to match the beat, moments of heartbreaking fluidity for the melody, a finale that would leave an audience feeling like they'd been through a war. He was a man possessed, which made navigating daily dorm life an exercise in extreme espionage. "Dude, are you even in there?" Kaminari asked, waving a hand in front of Izuku's face during a particularly boring lecture on postmodern quark theory. Izuku blinked, pulling one headphone away from his ear. The relentless beat of Dynamite's track faded slightly. Sorry, just tired. You've been just tired for days, Shinso observed from his other side, not looking up from his notes. You're vibrating. Did you finally overdose on caffeine? It's the day guy, Achiko whispered, leaning over from the row in front. She winked. He posted a still from his next video on his community tab. Just a silhouette against a red light. The comments are going feral. I don't blame you for being distracted. Izuku's stomach did a backflip. He'd posted that teaser last night. He hadn't realized she was that deep in the fandom. I hadn't seen that, he lied weakly. It's all anyone can talk about, she sighed. Well, that and the fact that Dynamite is teasing a huge collab. The music gossip pages are losing their minds. Nobody knows who it's with, but everyone hopes it's with him. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. He forced a neutral expression. That would be something. It would be everything, she squealed, a little too loudly, earning a shush from Ida behind them. From the corner of his eye, Izuku saw Katsuki's head turn slightly. He'd been slumped in his seat, looking bored out of his skull, but at Achiko's outburst, his eyes, narrowed and assessing, flicked over to Izuku. He said nothing, but the weight of his gaze was a physical pressure. Izuku quickly looked back at his notebook, pretending to be intensely fascinated by his own doodles of All Might. The walk back to the dorms was a special kind of agony. The track was a constant earworm, and Izuku had to consciously stop himself from practicing isolations as he walked. He was so in his head that he didn't see the crack in the pavement. His foot caught, and he stumbled forward with a yelp, his notes flying out of his hands. He braced for impact with the concrete. It never came. A strong hand shot out and grabbed the back of his hoodie, yanking him upright with a force that rattled his teeth. "The fuck is wrong with you, Deku?" Katsuki grumbled, releasing him like he was contaminated. "You've been walking around like a goddamn zombie for days. Watch where you're going, dumbass. Izuku's face was on fire. Sorry, Kaken. Thanks. Katsuki didn't acknowledge the thanks. He was staring at the scattered papers on the ground. His eyes landed on one page in particular. It was filled not with notes, but with Izuku's choreography notations, a mess of arrows, stick figures in dynamic poses, and musical measure markers. Izuku's blood turned to ice. He dove for the papers, scrambling to gather them up. Just the doodles. Bored in class. Katsuki's eyes lingered on the paper for a fraction of a second too long before he flicked his gaze away, a bored expression back on his face. Weird fucking doodles. He kept walking, leaving Izuku kneeling on the pavement, his heart trying to beat its way out of his chest. That was too close. Way too close. The common room that night was a pressure cooker of teenage energy and the lingering mystery of the viral video. Ida had, for once, given up on enforcing productivity, and the group had devolved into their natural state of chaotic bonding. Mina had commandeered the TV, hooking up her phone to play a notoriously terrible horror movie. Kirishima was valiantly pretending he wasn't scared, while Kaminari was already shrieking at the opening credits. Shinso looked like he was mentally calculating the quickest escape route. Achiko and Tsuyu were passing a bowl of popcorn between them, and Todoroki was staring at the screen with his usual unnerving intensity, a half-eaten bowl of cold soba in his lap. Izuku was curled in his favorite armchair, trying to look engrossed in the movie while mentally mapping out the transition into Dynamite's melodic break. He was so focused he didn't notice the dip in the chair until it was too late. Katsuki dropped onto the wide arm of the chair, his hip pressing against Izuku's shoulder. He smelled like clean laundry and that faint, spicy scent that was uniquely him. Izuku froze, every single thought in his head vaporizing into static. This movie is fucking trash, Katsuki announced to the room, though he made no move to get up. You're trash. Kaminari yelled, then yelped as a jump scare happened on screen. It's about the ambience, Bakugu. Mina argued. The aesthetic. The aesthetic is my ass, Katsuki retorted, but he was smiling, a sharp, feral thing. He shifted, and his thigh pressed more firmly against Izuku. Izuku felt like he was going to spontaneously combust. This was normal. For them. Katsuki was bizarrely tactile with him, always had been. A shove, a headlock, a knee pressed against his on the couch. It was a language Izuku had never known how to interpret. Was it aggression? Ownership? Habit? He craved it and feared it in equal measure. On screen, the protagonist was creeping down a dark hallway. The music was tense. Izuku held his breath, waiting for the scare. Katsuki leaned down, his voice a low rumble meant only for Izuku's ear. So, this walking into walls thing. You sure you're just tired? Izuku's heart stuttered. He kept his eyes glued to the TV. Why? Just a lot of studying. Aichin. Katsuki didn't sound convinced. You're a shitty liar, nerd. Before Izuku could formulate a response, not that he had one, the movie's monster leaped out with a screech. The common room erupted. Kaminari screamed like a tea kettle and flung his arms out, smacking Siro in the face. Kirishima jumped so hard he elbowed Mina, who shrieked and spilled popcorn all over herself. Achiko yelped and grabbed Tsuyu's arm. And Izuku, already strung tighter than a bowstring, jolted violently. His instinctual reaction was to curl in on himself, which meant he turned into Katsuki, his face smushing against Katsuki's side. For a single, heart-stopping second, everything stopped. He was surrounded by Katsuki. The soft cotton of his t-shirt, the solid warmth of his body, the scent of him. It was overwhelming. It was everything. Katsuki went perfectly still. Then the moment broke. Laughter filled the room as everyone reacted to their own jump scares. Holy shit! Kaminari yelled, clutching his chest. I think I pissed myself a little. You definitely elbowed me in the boob, you oaf. Mina cried, laughing as she brushed popcorn off her lap. Izuku scrambled back, putting a precious inch of space between himself and the heat of Katsuki's body. His face was a nuclear furnace. Sorry, Kaken. I didn't. The jump scare. Katsuki was looking down at him, his expression unreadable. His usual scowl was gone, replaced by something quieter, more intense. His eyes were dark in the low light of the TV. "Es fine," he muttered, his voice gruff. He didn't move from the arm of the chair. His thigh was still a line of heat against Izuku's arm. The movie played on, but Izuku couldn't have told you a single thing that happened. All his awareness was hyper-focused on the point of contact between them. Every shift of fabric, every breath Katsuki took. It was agony. It was heaven. He chanced a glance up. Katsuki was watching the screen again, but his jaw was tight, and the tips of his ears looked pink. Had they always been pink? The conversation eventually turned, as it always seemed to these days, back to the internet's favorite mystery. "I'm telling you, the Deku guy has to be a pro-hero in disguise," Siro said, stretching his arms. "That level of body control? It's not normal." "Or a villain," Kaminari added. "A super hot, dance-fighting villain. That is a highly illogical career path." Ida interjected. "Villainy rarely offers a comprehensive benefits package or a stable retirement plan. Maybe he's just a guy who's really good at dancing and wants his privacy." Izuku mumbled into his knees, which he had pulled up to his chest. "Boring." Mina sing-songed. "The mystery is the best part." "Speaking of mysteries," she leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "The Dynamite collab. The teasers are getting more intense. It's gotta be our guy." "It has to be." Achiko nodded fervently. "The timelines match up. Deku posts a huge video, goes quiet, and then Dynamite starts teasing a collab. That's not a coincidence. It would be the team-up of the century," Kirishima said, pumping a fist. "So manly." "It's a marketing scheme," Katsuki said suddenly, his voice cutting through the chatter. He still hadn't moved from his perch. "They're playing you all for idiots. Building a mystique." He said the word like it tasted disgusting. "It's all a calculated fucking performance to sell merch and get clicks." The words shouldn't have hurt as much as they did. They were, technically, true. But hearing them from Katsuki, with his thighs still pressed against him, felt like a betrayal. "You don't know that," Izuku said, his voice a little sharper than he intended. Katsuki looked down at him, a challenge in his red eyes. "You defending him now, nerd? Thought you were too busy studying." "I'm just saying," Izuku said, holding his gaze, feeling a spark of Deku's defiance flicker to life. "Maybe the performance is the art. Maybe the mystery is part of it. Maybe it's not about selling anything. Maybe it's just about creating something that makes people feel something." The room had gone quiet. Everyone was staring at them, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Katsuki's eyes narrowed. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping again, low and dangerous. "And what does it make you feel, Izuku?" Izuku's breath caught. The way Katsuki said his name, his real name, was a rare thing. It was never in moments like this. It was a direct hit. He was saved by the universe, or more specifically, by Hitoshi Shinsu's phone. A notification sound echoed, the distinct, first few beats of Dynamite's new track that had been all over the hype trailers. The spell broke. Everyone turned to Shinso. Shinso blinked, pulling his phone out. "Oh." The full track just dropped. Early. The common room erupted into chaos for the second time that night. IT dropped. "Play it. Play it now." "Holy shit, is this the collab?" Shinso, looking mildly put upon, plugged his phone into the TV's AUX cord. "Fine. But if you all start screaming, I'm leaving." The first, pounding heartbeat of Dynamite's track filled the common room. Everyone fell silent. This was different from watching a dance video on a phone. This was an experience. The bass vibrated through the floorboards. The synths sliced through the air. It was brutal, magnificent, and utterly captivating. Izuku watched his friends' faces. Kaminari's mouth was hanging open. Mina's eyes were wide. Kirishima was nodding along, a fierce grin on his face. Even Todoroki looked mildly interested. He chanced to look at Katsuki. He was still perched on the arm of the chair, but his posture was rigid. His eyes were fixed on the TV, but he didn't seem to be seeing it. He was listening, really listening, his head tilted slightly. A deep frown was etched on his face, but it wasn't his usual anger. It was concentration. Recognition? The track built to its furious climax and then ended abruptly, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. For a moment, no one spoke. Wow, Achiko breathed finally. That was insane, Kirishima said. Dynamite is a god, Kaminari declared, looking like he'd seen the face of the divine. It's loud, Todoroki offered. Then, everyone started talking at once, dissecting the song, theorizing about the collab, wondering what kind of video could possibly match that intensity. Izuku tuned it out. He was watching Katsuki, who finally pushed himself off the arm of the chair. He didn't look at anyone. He just shoved his hands in his pockets and walked out of the common room without a word. The room was too loud, too full of energy for anyone else to really notice. But Izuku noticed. He noticed the tense set of Katsuki's shoulders. The way his hands were clenched in his pockets. And as the door swung shut behind him, Izuku was left with one burning, terrifying question. Had Katsuki recognized the song? Or had he recognized something else? Chapter 4. The Practice Room and the Pomeranian's Panic. Chapter text. The fallout from Dynamite's track release was seismic. The internet fractured into 1,000 conspiracy theories. Music critics wrote essays dissecting its primal fury and unexpected vulnerability. Memes were born, and the pressure on Izuku quadrupled. His manager was a constant, buzzing presence in his pocket. They love it. They're obsessed. The expectations are astronomical. No pressure. There's so much pressure. Dynamite's team says he's particular. He wants to see your concept before greenlighting. Don't fuck this up. Izuku wasn't planning on fucking it up. He was planning on creating the best piece of choreography of his life. Which meant he needed more than his small studio. He needed space. He needed to move. The old gym on the east side of campus was perfect. It was rarely used after hours, had a high ceiling, and most importantly, a locking door. He'd borrowed the key from the janitor's closet weeks ago, a feat of stealth that would have made any pro hero proud. For the next several nights, that gym became his sanctuary. He'd wait until the dorm was asleep, slip out, and lose himself for hours in the vast, echoing space. He poured everything into the Dynamite routine. The frustration, the fear, the secret pride, the aching, confusing want he felt every time Katsuki looked at him, it all got channeled into the movement. The choreography was brutal. It was all hard-hitting power, sharp angles, and aggressive footwork that echoed the track's explosive percussion. But he'd woven in moments of breathtaking fluidity for the melodic break, a slow, aching roll of his hips, a hand dragging down his face in a pantomime of despair, a spin that felt less like a dance move and more like a soul being ripped in two. He was in the middle of the finale, drenched in sweat, his body screaming in protest as he pushed it to its absolute limit, when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A soft thump from the hallway outside. He froze, mid-motion, his chest heaving. The only sound was the frantic pounding of his own heart and the faint echo of the music from his Bluetooth speaker. Silence. He must have imagined it. The gym was supposed to be empty. He waited, every muscle tense, listening so hard his ears rang. Nothing. Letting out a shaky breath, he walked over to his bag to grab his water bottle. He took a long drink, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He was about to restart the track from the top when he saw it. A shadow. Under the door. Someone was out there. Panic, cold and immediate, shot through his veins. Shit. He moved on pure instinct. In one fluid motion, he killed the music, plunged the gym into silence, and dove behind a stack of mats in the far corner. He pulled his knees to his chest, making himself as small as possible, his black clothes blending into the shadows. His heart was hammering so loudly he was sure it would give him away. The door handle jiggled. But it's locked. Thank God, it's locked. There was a pause. Then a low, frustrated grunt. A voice. Muffled by the door but unmistakable. The fuck? Who's in there? Izuku's blood turned to ice. He knew that voice. He'd known it his entire life. Katsuki. What was he doing here? How did he find this place? Why wasn't he at the dorm, asleep? The handle jiggled again, more violently this time. I know someone's in there. I heard the music. Open the damn door. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Please go away. Please, please, please just go away. There was a long, tense silence. Izuku could picture him on the other side of the door, scowling, his hands shoved in his pockets, trying to figure out what to do. Then a different sound. The scuff of a shoe against the floor. Was he sitting down? Fine. Katsuki's voice came through the door, slightly clearer now. He sounded annoyed but not angry. Almost conversational. Don't open the door. Whatever. I'm not leaving until you're done, though. I need the fucking gym. Izuku's mind raced. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't leave. It was a stalemate. Look, Katsuki said, his voice a low rumble. I don't give a shit what you're doing in there. Probably some extra credit bullshit for Ida's dumb dance elective. Just hurry it up. I can't sleep. Need to hit something. A dance elective? Izuku almost laughed, the sound coming out as a choked sob. If only it were that simple. He stayed frozen, barely breathing. Minutes ticked by. He could hear Katsuki shifting outside the door, the faint sound of him sighing in frustration. Then he started talking again. Not to Izuku, not really. Just talking. Muttering to himself, his voice a soft, gravelly thing that carried through the wooden door. Stupid fucking team. Can't run a simple play to save their lives. Coach is riding my ass like I'm supposed to be everywhere at once. The pause. And fucking everything else is stupid. Izuku listened, mesmerized. This was a side of Katsuki he rarely saw. The quiet, frustrated vulnerability he usually only showed in glimpses, and never to a crowd. That damn song is stuck in my head, Katsuki muttered, almost too low to hear. The dynamite one. It's fucking annoying. Izuku's breath hitched. Sounds like, I don't know. It's loud. It's angry. Another pause. A longer one. The quiet part in the middle, though. It's different. Izuku's heart ached. He was describing the very part Izuku had poured his own hidden feelings into. Reminds me of that nerd, Katsuki said, so quietly Izuku almost missed it. The world stopped spinning. What? Gets all quiet and shit sometimes. Looks at me with those big, stupid eyes like I've hung the fucking moon. Katsuki's voice was a soft, frustrated growl. Thinks I don't see it. Thinks he's so fucking subtle. Idiot. Izuku's hands were trembling. He clamped them over his mouth to keep from making a sound. Was he dreaming? Was this some sleep deprivation-induced hallucination? He's been weirder than usual lately, Katsuki continued, unaware he was confessing his secrets to his secret crush's hiding place. Jumpier. Tired. Always mumbling to himself. The fuck is he doing? If he's in some kind of trouble, the sentence hung in the air, unfinished, but the protective threat in it was palpable. Izuku felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This was too much. This was everything he'd ever wanted to hear and the worst possible way to hear it. And now this fucking song is everywhere, Katsuki grumbled, his tone shifting back to annoyance, as if embarrassed by his own moment of softness. And that damn dancing guy. Deku or whatever. It's all anyone talks about. It's infuriating. The irony was so thick Izuku could taste it. He heard a rustle, like Katsuki was getting to his feet. Forget it. This is stupid. I'm going to the weight room. Don't break anything in there, you fucking phantom. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading away until there was only silence. Izuku stayed behind the mats for a long time, his body shaking. He'd just been given a glimpse into Katsuki's soul, and it had nearly broken him. He felt exhilarated and terrified, seen and more hidden than ever. He finally crept out, his legs weak. He gathered his things on autopilot, his mind replaying Katsuki's words on a loop. Reminds me of that nerd. Thinks I don't see it? If he's in some kind of trouble, he had to get out of there. He slipped out of the gym, locking the door behind him, and practically ran back to the dorms, his heart still trying to beat its way out of his chest. The next day, Katsuki was in a spectacularly foul mood. He slammed doors. He snapped at everyone. He nearly blew up the microwave because his instant noodles were taking too long. Izuku, fragile and raw from the night before, did his best to avoid him. He felt like he was carrying a live wire in his chest, and one wrong look from Katsuki would make it spark. He was hiding in the library, pretending to study, when his phone buzzed. It was the group chat blowing up. Pinky, emergency meeting in the common room. Charge bolt, itis important. Tape, bring snacks. Alien Queen, bring the good snacks, not the healthy bullshit Ida buys. Izuku's anxiety, already at a fever pitch, spiked. Well now, had someone found out? Had Katsuki put the pieces together after all? He trudged back to the dorms, his stomach in knots. The common room was packed. Everyone was there, looking serious. Katsuki was slouched in his usual armchair, arms crossed, looking like he was moments from committing arson. What's going on? Izuku asked, hovering near the doorway. We're staging an intervention, Mina announced, hands on her hips. Izuku's blood ran cold. An intervention? For who? For both of you, Achiko said, gesturing wildly between Izuku and Katsuki. Izuku blinked. Wah! You've been a nervous, sleep-deprived zombie, Mina said, pointing at Izuku. And you've been a rage-filled, door-slamming monster, she continued, whirling to point at Katsuki. It's bringing down the collective morale. Ida added, chopping the air for emphasis. It's a real bummer, dude, Kirishima said, looking genuinely concerned. So, Mina clapped her hands together. We've decided. You two are clearly suffering from severe, broodingness. And the only cure is a mandatory, old-school, best friend sleepover. Izuku stared. Katsuki stared. They both spoke at the same time. Absolutely not, Katsuki snarled. A sleepover? Izuku squeaked. Yes. Achiko said, her eyes sparkling. We've already moved a spare mattress into Bakuga's room. You're going to order pizza, watch stupid action movies, and talk it out. No arguing. You can't be serious, Katsuki said, standing up. The air around him crackled with barely contained fury. We are dead serious, Shinso said from the couch. He didn't look up from his phone. Kaminari cried this morning because you yelled at his waffle. It was a perfectly good waffle. Kaminari whined. This is the most asinine fucking thing I've ever heard, Katsuki spat. I'm not doing it. It's either that, Todoroki said calmly, or we tell everyone on the football team that you have a cherished, extensive collection of All Might plushies that you sleep with every night. A deadly silence fell over the room. Katsuki's face went through a terrifying series of expressions before settling on murderous rage. He took a step toward Todoroki. You wouldn't fucking dare. Todoroki took a slow sip of his juice box. Ida has photographic evidence. Ida adjusted his glasses, refusing to meet Katsuki's eyes. It was for the greater good, Bakugo. Your emotional well-being is paramount. Katsuki looked like he was about to spontaneously combust. He turned his glare on Izuku as if this were all his fault. This is your fucking doing, isn't it, nerd? With your moping. I don't. Izuku stammered, completely blindsided. It's settled. Mina chirped, ignoring the impending explosion. Pizza's on its way. Bashu. To the room. Bond. And that's how Izuku found himself being physically pushed by Kirishima and Shiro into Katsuki's unervingly clean and minimalist room. A futon mattress had been unceremoniously dumped on the floor next to Katsuki's perfectly made bed. The door shut behind them with a final sounding click. They stood in silence for a full minute, the only sound the furious pounding of Izuku's heart. Katsuki finally broke the silence. He kicked the leg of his desk. God damn it, he roared. Izuku flinched. Katsuki spun around to face him, his eyes blazing. This is your fault. How is this my fault? Izuku asked, a spark of defiance igniting in his gut. You're the one who's been slamming doors like a toddler. I wouldn't be so pissed if you weren't being so fucking sketchy. Katsuki shot back, taking a step closer. What the hell is going on with you, huh? You're lying about something. I know it. The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and dangerous. Izuku's mouth went dry. He could confess. Right now. He could tell him everything. About the dancing, the videos, the helmet, the gym last night. He looked at Katsuki's furious, beautiful face, and the words died in his throat. "I'm not lying about anything, Kaken," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm just stressed. With school." Katsuki stared at him, his eyes searching Izuku's face for a crack in the facade. Izuku held his breath. Finally, Katsuki scoffed and looked away, running a hand through his spiky hair. "Whatever. This is so fucking stupid." He stomped over to his bed and threw himself down on it, grabbing his phone and ignoring Izuku completely. Izuku stood there, feeling awkward and exposed. He slowly sat down on the edge of the futon. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. An hour later, pizza arrived. They ate in silence, side by side on the floor, watching some mindless explosion-filled movie Katsuki had put on. The tension was still there, a live wire stretched taut between them. During a particularly loud car chase, Izuku's phone buzzed. It was his manager. Dynamite approved the concept. He loves it. He wants to meet in person tomorrow. Izuku's piece of pizza slipped from his fingers, landing cheese side down on the carpet. He was going to meet Dynamite, the mysterious, brilliant, infuriatingly talented producer whose music sounded like Katsuki's soul. And he was going to do it while trapped in a mandatory sleepover with the real thing. He chanced a glance at Katsuki, who was scowling at the screen, completely oblivious to the seismic shift happening 2 feet away from him. This was going to be a long night. Chapter 5. The Meeting and the Misdirected Message. Chapter text. The sleepover was a special kind of torture. Izuku didn't sleep a wink. He lay on the futon, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the sound of Katsuki's breathing from the bed a few feet away. Every shift of sheets, every soft, sleepy sigh, was a brand on his consciousness. His mind was a chaotic whirlwind. Katsuki's confession through the gym door. The terrifying, exhilarating prospect of meeting Dynamite. The suffocating proximity to the boy who occupied roughly 98% of his waking thoughts. He replayed Katsuki's words over and over. "Reminds me of that nerd. Thinks I don't see it?" He saw it. Katsuki saw him. Not the persona, not the phantom, but the quiet, yearning mess of a boy who tripped over his own feet. The knowledge was a fragile, precious thing, and it made the lie he was living feel 1,000 times heavier. When the first gray light of dawn finally filtered through the blinds, Izuku felt like he'd run a marathon. He was exhausted, wired, and nauseous with anxiety. Katsuki, because the universe was fundamentally unfair, woke up looking like a goddamn model. He stretched, his shirt riding up to reveal a strip of toned abdomen, and let out a grunt that was half growl, half sigh. His blonde hair was adorably mussed, and his red eyes were still soft with sleep. He blinked, looked over at Izuku on the floor, and his face immediately settled into its usual scowl. "You look like shit." "Good morning to you too, Kaken," Izuku mumbled, sitting up. His back ached from the thin mattress. "Did you even sleep?" Katsuki asked, swinging his legs out of bed. "No. Of course not." He stood up and stretched again, and Izuku quickly looked away, his face heating. "Whatever. The stupid sleepover is over. Get out. I need to shower." It was a dismissal, blunt and crude, but Izuku seized it like a lifeline. He scrambled to his feet, gathered his things, and practically fled the room, the scent of Katsuki's sleep-warm skin lingering in his nose. He had a meeting to prepare for. The location was a high-end, discreet recording studio in a part of town Izuku usually only saw on his bike. He'd spent 2 hours agonizing over what to wear, finally settling on his civilian, at Deca gear, dark, well-fitting jeans, a black hoodie, and his leather jacket. He left the helmet at home, opting for a black face mask and a beanie pulled low over his curls. It was the best he could do to bridge the gap between his two identities. He felt like a spy walking into enemy territory. His palms were sweating. The receptionist, a cool-looking woman with purple hair, didn't even blink at his disguised appearance. "You must be Deku," she said, her voice smooth. They're expecting you. Studio B, down the hall to the left. So Dynamite wasn't alone. That was probably for the best. Izuku wasn't sure he could handle being in a room alone with the musical genius whose work had consumed his life. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. Studio B was a temple to sound. Soundproofing panels covered the walls, and a massive mixing console dominated the center of the room, covered in more knobs and sliders than a spaceship. A large window looked into an isolation booth. And standing by the console, arguing with a man in a sleek suit, presumably his manager, was Dynamite. Izuku's brain short-circuited. Because Dynamite was not what he expected. He was tall. Almost as tall as Katsuki. He wore black cargo pants and a tight black tank top that showed off arms corded with muscle and covered in intricate, swirling tattoos of, were those music notes and explosions? His hair was a wild, spiky mess of black and red, and he had a series of silver hoops in one ear. But the most striking thing was his face. Or rather, what was visible of it. He wore a black mask not unlike Izuku's, but his eyes were visible, a startling, intense electric blue, currently narrowed in irritation. Told you, I don't give a shit about the branding synergy, I care about the goddamn sound, he was snapping at the suited man. We are aware, sir, the man said, sounding strained. But the investors can suck my... Dynamite stopped mid-sentence. His electric blue eyes had landed on Izuku. The anger seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a sharp, calculating interest. He looked Izuku up and down, a slow, appraising sweep that made Izuku feel like a specimen under a microscope. You're Deku, he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was deeper than Izuku had imagined, a rough baritone that vibrated through the room. Izuku nodded, his throat too dry to speak. Dynamite dismissed his manager with a jerk of his head. The man scurried out, looking relieved. The door clicked shut, leaving the two of them alone in the silent, expensive room. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two masked men, sizing each other up. Then, Dynamite gestured to the console. I heard the mock-up. The choreography. It's not shit. Izuku blinked. That was high praise, he assumed. Thank you. The melodic break, Dynamite continued, walking over to the console and pulling up the track. The haunting few seconds of melody filled the room. You made it. How? It was such a direct, artistic question. It threw Izuku off guard. I just felt it, he said, finding his voice. The contrast. The fury before it, and after, it's not peace, it's sorrow. It's like the quiet after a scream. I wanted the movement to reflect that. To be vulnerable. Dynamite was watching him, his blue eyes intense. Chin. He seemed to process that. You get it. He played the entire track then, loud, letting the sound consume the room. He watched Izuku as it played, studying his reactions. Izuku couldn't help it. His body began to move slightly, unconsciously, tracing the shapes of the choreography in the air. When the track ended, Dynamite gave a single, sharp nod. But it'll work. He turned fully to face Izuku, crossing his arms. His biceps bulged. The video. I want it raw. Gritty. No polished studio shit. An abandoned warehouse. At night. Just you, the music and the camera. Izuku's heart leapt. It was exactly what he would have wanted. That's perfect. I'll be there, Dynamite said, his eyes glinting behind the mask. On set. To oversee the sound mix on location. A jolt of nerves shot through Izuku. Dynamite on set. Watching him work. The pressure was immense. Okay, he managed. Dynamite stared at him for another long moment. You're shorter than I expected. The comment was so absurdly familiar, so Katsuki-like, that Izuku let out a startled laugh. Sorry to disappoint. A weird, almost smile seemed to tug at the corner of Dynamite's visible eye. Didn't say I was disappointed. He grabbed a card from the console and scribbled something on it. My direct line. Don't give it to your manager. Logistics and shit go through him. This is for creative discussions. Izuku took the card. It was black, with just a stylized on it and a handwritten number. It felt like being handed a state secret. The meeting was over. It had lasted maybe 15 minutes. Izuku felt like he'd been through a hurricane. As he turned to leave, Dynamite spoke again. "Hey!" Izuku paused, hand on the doorknob. "Don't be late to the shoot." The words were a threat and a challenge, delivered in that low, gravelly voice. Izuku just nodded and escaped into the hallway, his mind reeling. Dynamite was intense, arrogant, brilliant, and weirdly compelling. He felt a surge of artistic kinship he'd never felt with anyone before. And underneath it all, that nagging feeling of familiarity persisted. He was so lost in thought about the meeting, about Dynamite's intense blue eyes, that he completely forgot about the landmine waiting for him back at the dorms. He was in the common room, trying to quietly eat a bowl of cereal while mentally storyboarding the warehouse shoot, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Creative discussion. What's your opinion on industrial decay as a visual metaphor versus outright destruction? Izuku's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Dynamite. He'd texted him. Already? Ooh, who's that, Midoriya? Mina sang, popping up over the back of the couch like a neon pink meerkat. You got a text and you got all blushy. I'm not blushy. Izuku protested, immediately feeling his face heat. He shoved his phone into his pocket. It's no one. A study group. Didn't look like a study group text, Kaminari said, wiggling his eyebrows. Looked like a secrets text. Is it a girl? Achiko asked, her eyes wide with excitement. A boy? Tell us. It's no one. Izuku insisted, panicking. He could feel Katsuki's gaze from across the room, where he was supposedly reading a textbook but was clearly listening. Come on, man, don't hold out on us. Kirishima laughed. We're your friends. Who's got you smiling at your phone? I wasn't smiling. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Twice. He flinched. There's another one. Mina screeched. You have to tell us now. It's the law. The law of friendship. Kaminari agreed. In his desperation to shut them down, to deflect the attention, Izuku said the first thing that popped into his head. It's just Kaken, okay? He's just texting me. About homework. The lie landed with a thud. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at Katsuki, who was now staring at Izuku with a look of pure, unadulterated bewilderment. The fuck I am, Katsuki said, his voice dangerously low. Izuku's blood turned to ice. Shit. I mean, you texted me earlier. About the reading for modern hero ethics. Katsuki's eyes narrowed into slits. He slowly pulled out his own phone, made a show of looking at it, and then held it up. The screen was dark. Haven't touched my phone all afternoon, shitnerd. So who the hell are you really texting? He was trapped. He could feel everyone's eyes on him, curious and waiting. He'd painted himself into a corner with a lie so stupid and easily disproven it was pathetic. His phone buzzed again. A third time. It felt like a death knell. Katsuki's expression shifted from confusion to something darker, something suspicious and deeply annoyed. He stood up and started walking toward him. Let me see it. No. Izuku yelped, scrambling back, clutching his pocket. If it's just fucking homework, why can't I see? Katsuki pressed, his voice a growl. He was getting closer. It's private. Since when do we have private fucking homework? Katsuki was in front of him now, looming over him. He held out his hand. Give me the phone, Deku. Bakugo, maybe don't, Kirishima started, but Katsuki ignored him. Izuku's mind raced. He couldn't show him. He couldn't. Dynamite's name, his number, their conversation about the shoot, it was all there. It would lead to questions he could never answer. It's none of your business, Kaken. Izuku said, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and defiance. The use of the old nickname in that context, laced with panic, made Katsuki freeze for a split second. His eyes searched Izuku's face, and for a moment, Izuku saw something like hurt flash in the red depths before it was buried under a wave of anger. Fine, Katsuki spat, dropping his hand. He took a step back, his face a mask of cold fury. Keep your secrets. See if I give a shit. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the common room, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. The room was dead silent. Well? Shinso said into the stillness. That went well. Izuku stood there, humiliated and trembling, the weight of his lies crushing down on him. He'd done it again. He'd pushed Katsuki away to protect a secret that was starting to feel less like a dream and more like a cage. His phone buzzed again in his hand. He looked down at the screen. Dynamite. What? He wanted to throw it against the wall. Instead, he typed a reply with trembling fingers, his vision blurry with unshed tears. Izuku, destruction. Definitely destruction. He hit send, then turned and walked to his room, ignoring the concerned calls of his friends. He locked the door, slid down to the floor, and put his head in his hands. He was lying to everyone. His friends. Dynamite. Katsuki. Himself. And the worst part was, he could still feel the ghost of Katsuki's hurt look, a sharper pain than any of his lies. Chapter 6. The Fallout and the First Aid. Chapter text. The fallout from the TextGate incident was immediate and icy. Katsuki didn't just ignore Izuku, he treated him like a ghost. If Izuku entered a room, Katsuki would leave. If their paths crossed in the hallway, Katsuki's eyes would slide right over him as if he were invisible. He stopped using his name, stopped shoving him, stopped taking his food. The absence of his attention was a constant, aching void. It was, Izuku decided, a special kind of hell. He'd rather have Katsuki screaming in his face than this, nothing. The silence was a punishment far worse than any explosion. The rest of the group tiptoed around them, a palpable tension hanging over the dorm. Mina's attempts to lighten the mood fell flat. Even Kaminari's idiocy was muted. They were a planet that had lost its sun, and its unstable moon was now spinning off into deep space. Izuku threw himself into the dynamite project with a feverish, desperate intensity. It was the only thing that kept the hollow feeling at bay. The warehouse location was secured, a vast, derelict space on the city's outskirts, all rusted metal and shattered windows. The shoot was scheduled for 2 days away. He practiced until he collapsed, until his muscles screamed and his mind went blessedly, numbingly blank. He practiced in the stolen gym, but every creak of the floorboards made him jump, half expecting, half hoping to hear a voice on the other side of the door. But Katsuki never came back. The night before the shoot, a storm rolled in. Rain lashed against the windows of the dorm, and wind howled like a dying animal. Izuku was in his room, going over the choreography for the 100th time, when a different sound cut through the storm's roar. A crash. A shouted curse. The sound of something, or someone, falling. It came from downstairs. Izuku was out of his room in a heartbeat, his hero instincts overriding everything else. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding. Had someone broken a window? Had someone gotten hurt? He skidded into the common room. It was dark, lit only by the flickering light of the storm outside. And there, in the middle of the room, was Katsuki. He was on his knees, surrounded by the shattered remains of a large vase that had once held Ida's aesthetically pleasing decorative reeds. Water and reeds were scattered everywhere. Katsuki was clutching his right hand, which was bleeding profusely onto the carpet. "Kaken!" Izuku cried, rushing forward. Katsuki's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with pain and surprise, but they narrowed the second he saw Izuku. "Go the fuck away," he snarled, trying to push himself to his feet with his uninjured hand. "You're bleeding," Izuku said, ignoring him and dropping to his knees amidst the wreckage. He reached for Katsuki's hand. "I said fuck off." Katsuki tried to yank his hand away, but the movement jostled the injury and he hissed in pain, his face paling. "Stop being such a baby and let me see it," Izuku said, his voice sharper than he intended. The sight of the blood, of Katsuki in pain, had burned away his own anxiety, leaving behind a core of steady, determined concern. He grabbed Katsuki's wrist firmly. Katsuki stiffened, but he stopped fighting. His skin was burning hot. Izuku gently turned his hand over. A large, wicked shard of ceramic was embedded in his palm, and a deep gash ran across his fingers. Blood welled up, dark and alarming. "Oh, Kaken," Izuku breathed, his stomach clenching. "This is bad. What happened?" "None of your fucking business," Katsuki muttered, but the fight had gone out of him. He was breathing heavily, his shoulders slumped. Couldn't sleep. Came down for water. Tripped over that stupid fucking rug in the dark. Izuku looked over at the rug Ida had insisted on placing precisely there. It was indeed a tripping hazard. "Okay, don't move the shard. We need to get you to the infirmary." "No," Katsuki said, his voice tight. "It's just a cut. I'm fine." "You are not fine. You have a piece of a vase in your hand. You could need stitches." "I'm not going to the fucking infirmary," Katsuki insisted, trying to stand again. "Just get the first aid kit." Izuku stared at him. He was being stubborn, irrational. But the thought of leaving him alone like this was unbearable. "Fine. But you're listening to me, okay? For once in your life, you're going to do what I say." A flicker of surprise crossed Katsuki's pained expression. Izuku never talked to him like this. Izuku didn't wait for a response. He ran to the bathroom, grabbed the extensive first aid kit Ida insisted they maintain, and hurried back. Katsuki was still on his knees, cradling his hand, looking lost and young and infuriatingly vulnerable. "Okay," Izuku said, his voice softening as he knelt in front of him again. He opened the kit. "This is going to hurt. I need to get the big piece out first." Katsuki just nodded, his jaw clenched. He wouldn't look at Izuku. Izuku took a deep breath, his own hands trembling slightly. He'd done this before on himself mostly, but never on someone else. Never on Katsuki. He used a pair of tweezers from the kit, his touch as gentle as he could make it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. He gripped the shard and pulled. Katsuki sucked in a sharp breath, his whole body going rigid, but he didn't make a sound. The shard came free with a sickening, wet sound. Izuku tossed it aside and immediately pressed a thick wad of gauze against the wound, applying pressure. "Keep pressure on that," he instructed. Katsuki's left hand came up to hold the gauze in place, his fingers brushing against Izuku's. Both of them flinched at the contact. Izuku busied himself with antiseptic wipes, bandages, and tape, his movements efficient despite the frantic beating of his heart. The storm raged outside, but in their little circle of light in the dark common room, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. "Why are you doing this?" Katsuki's voice was low, rough. Izuku didn't look up from wrapping a bandage around Katsuki's palm. "Doing what?" "This." Katsuki gestured weakly with his bandaged hand. "Playing nurse. After I've been," he trailed off, unable to say it. "An absolute dick?" Izuku supplied, tying off the bandage with a little more force than necessary. A surprised, pained huff of air escaped Katsuki. Almost a laugh. "Yeah, that." Izuku sat back on his heels, finally looking at him. "Because you're my friend, Kaken. And you were hurt. It's really that simple." Katsuki finally met his gaze. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary confusion. The flickering lightning outside illuminated the sharp planes of his face. "I'm not a good friend." "I know," Izuku said softly. "But you're my friend anyway." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds the rain and their breathing. "I wasn't texting a girl," Izuku blurted out. The words were out before he could stop them. He couldn't tell the whole truth, but he could offer this one piece of it. A half-truth to bridge the gap. "Or boy. It's about a project. A secret project. I'm working on something. I can't talk about it yet, but it's important to me. That's who was texting me." Katsuki stared at him, his red eyes searching Izuku's face. The suspicion was still there, but it was tempered now by something else. Curiosity. "A project?" "Yeah." Izuku looked down at his hands, stained with Katsuki's blood. "It's something I'm good at. Something that's just for me. I didn't want to share it yet. I didn't want anyone's opinions. Especially yours," he didn't add. "Because your opinion is the only one that matters." Katsuki was quiet for a long time. "You've been sneaking out," he said finally. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. Izuku's head jerked up. "How did you?" "I hear you," Katsuki said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, a faint blush visible on his cheeks even in the dim light. Your room is next to mine. I hear your window open. I hear you leave. Izuku's breath caught. He'd known. All this time, Katsuki had known he was sneaking out and he'd never said anything. Never confronted him. Just watched. Waited. Why didn't you? Izuku trailed off. Katsuki shrugged his good shoulder, a stiff, awkward movement. Figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Or get yourself killed. 50-50. It was the closest thing to I trust you and I worry about you that Izuku had ever heard from him. The admission was so huge, so vulnerable, it left him speechless. The anger, the silence, it hadn't just been about the lie. It had been about being shut out. Katsuki, who noticed everything, who heard him leave every night, had been waiting for an invitation into this secret part of Izuku's life. And when Izuku had lied to his face instead, it had felt like a rejection. I'm sorry, Izuku said, the words heartfelt. And aching. I'm sorry I lied. I need to do this on my own first. Katsuki nodded slowly, still not looking at him. Fine. He took a deep breath. Is it? Is it illegal? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that Izuku let out a wet laugh. What? Kaken, no. It's not illegal. Achin. Katsuki seemed to relax slightly. Good. 'Cause if you got arrested, I'd have to break you out. And that would be a fucking pain in my ass. Izuku's heart did a painful, hopeful squeeze. This was them. This was their language. Threats wrapped in care. Insults as endearments. I'll be more careful, Izuku promised. I'll tell you about it. When it's done. Katsuki finally looked at him again, and the intensity in his red eyes was almost too much to bear. You better. He tried to push himself up, wincing as he put weight on his injured hand. Let me help, Izuku said, scrambling to his feet. He slid an arm around Katsuki's waist, ignoring the way his own skin tingled at the contact, and helped haul him up. They stood there for a moment, chest to chest in the dark, Izuku's arm around him, Katsuki leaning into his side. The air between them was charged, thick with things unsaid. You're still a shitty liar, Katsuki mumbled, his forehead almost touching Izuku's. I know, Izuku whispered. Katsuki's good hand came up, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then brushed a stray curl off Izuku's forehead. The touch was so gentle, so unlike him, it stole the air from Izuku's lungs. Go to bed, nerd, Katsuki said, his voice rough. He pulled away, the moment broken. And clean this mess up before Four Eyes has an aneurysm in the morning. He turned and walked away, cradling his bandaged hand, leaving Izuku standing alone in the wreckage, his skin burning where Katsuki had touched him. The storm outside was beginning to calm. But the one in Izuku's heart was just getting started. He looked down at the blood on his hands, at the shattered pieces of the vase. Something had broken tonight. But something else, something fragile and new, had begun to piece itself together. He had a shoot tomorrow. He had a secret to keep. And he had the terrifying, exhilarating feeling that he was falling in love with his best friend all over again. Chapter 7. The Shoot and the Shocking Scar. Chapter text. The warehouse was perfect. It was everything Dynamite had promised and everything Izuku had dreamed of. Crumbling concrete, rusted steel beams jutting into the sky like the bones of a dead giant, and graffiti that told stories of decay and rebellion. The storm from the night before had left puddles on the uneven floor that reflected the single, powerful work light they'd set up, creating an eerie, beautiful atmosphere. Izuku was a live wire. The confrontation with Katsuki, the fragile truce they'd forged in the dark, the ghost of that gentle touch on his forehead, it had all fused with his pre-shoot adrenaline into a volatile, creative energy. He was buzzing with it. His small crew, a camera operator and a sound tech who were both paid a small fortune for their discretion, buzzed around him, making final adjustments. Then he arrived. Dynamite pulled up on a motorcycle that was a beast of black chrome and menace, its roar echoing through the vast space. He cut the engine and swung off, dressed head to toe in black leather and denim, his signature mask in place. He carried himself with an arrogant, prowling grace that made everyone on set straighten up a little. He nodded at the crew, then his electric blue eyes landed on Izuku. "You ready?" Izuku, clad in his own version of the outfit, the leather-like pants, the sleeveless hoodie, the chains on his wrists, felt a surge of defiant confidence. This was his element. "Born ready," he said, his voice steady, a hint of Deku bleeding through. A grunt that might have been approval was his answer. Dynamite walked over to the sound setup, plugging in his laptop. "Gonna run the track live through the speakers. Wanna feel the mix in the space. Don't fuck up the timing." The pressure was immense, but it was the good kind. The kind that forged diamonds. "Places," the camera operator called. Izuku took his starting position in the center of the light, the darkness of the warehouse swallowing everything else. He closed his eyes, finding his center. He thought of Katsuki's blood on his hands. The hurt in his eyes. The softness of his touch. The way his voice had sounded through the gym door. "Reminds me of that nerd." The first, pounding heartbeat of the track kicked in, vibrating through the concrete floor and up into Izuku's bones. He exploded into motion. It was the best he'd ever danced. It was raw, unfiltered emotion given physical form. Every hit was filled with the frustration of their fights. Every sharp turn was the pain of Katsuki's silence. When the music dropped into that haunting, melodic break, Izuku didn't just perform the choreography, he lived it. His body curved in on itself, a portrait of longing and sorrow, his hand dragging down his face as if he could wipe away the ache. It was a vulnerability he'd never shown before, not even in his private studio. He was so deep in the zone, so connected to the music and the movement, that he almost didn't notice it. During a particularly aggressive spin, his hoodie, looser than his usual performance tops, rippled around him. The motion, combined with the sweat soaking through the material, made the fabric cling to his back for a split second. In the periphery of his vision, reflected in a shard of a broken window acting as a makeshift mirror, he saw Dynamite. The producer was standing rigidly by his laptop, his hands frozen over the keyboard. But his eyes weren't on the screen. They were locked on Izuku, specifically on his back. His expression was one of pure, unadulterated shock. The moment passed in a heartbeat. Izuku completed the spin, the fabric falling loose again. Dynamite jerked his head down, focusing intensely on his laptop, his shoulders tense. But the seed was planted. A cold trickle of doubt cut through the heat of Izuku's performance. Why would he be looking at my back? The track built to its furious finale. Izuku poured every last ounce of his energy into it, the doubt fueling his intensity, making the anger in the dance more real. He ended on his knees, chest heaving, head bowed, exactly as he'd planned. Silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, the camera operator let out a low whistle. "Holy shit. That's the take. We don't need another one." The sound tech was just staring, open-mouthed. Izuku stayed on his knees, trying to catch his breath, his heart hammering for a new reason. He looked over at Dynamite. The producer was still staring at his laptop, but his knuckles were white. He slowly reached up and adjusted his mask, a gesture that seemed nervous. "Good," Dynamite said, his voice gruff, but it lacked its usual surety. "That'll work." He began packing his equipment with a speed that felt like a retreat. "Send the footage to my editor. I'll handle the rest." He didn't look at Izuku. He just slung his bag over his shoulder, strode to his bike, and kicked it to life. The engine's roar was jarring in the silent aftermath of the performance. And then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving a cloud of exhaust and a whirlwind of confusion behind. Izuku slowly got to his feet, his mind racing. The crew was packing up, chattering excitedly about the incredible footage they'd just captured. But Izuku wasn't listening. He was replaying that moment over and over. The look on Dynamite's face. The specific focus on his back. His back. A memory, sharp and sudden, flashed in his mind. The sleepover. Katsuki stretching as he woke up, his shirt riding up. And there, on the skin of his lower back, just above the waistband of his sweatpants, Izuku had only seen a glimpse, a flash of black and red ink. He'd written it off as one of Katsuki's many explosion-themed designs. But what if it wasn't? What if it was music notes? Another memory. Dynamite's tattoos. The ones on his arms. Music notes and explosions. It's impossible. It's a coincidence. But the doubts kept coming, connecting like dots in a conspiracy theory. Dynamite's build. His height. The way he moved, that prowling, aggressive grace. The way he grunted. The way he'd said Izuku was shorter than I expected. The way his music felt like Katsuki. Katsuki, who was a musical genius. Katsuki, who hid a secret, brilliant creative side under a layer of explosive anger. Katsuki, who had been acting weirder than usual, who was always listening to music, who had seemed almost recognized by the Dynamite track that night in the common room. It's ridiculous, Izuku told himself, helping the crew pack. Katsuki plays football. He curses and yells and cooks spicy food. He doesn't produce intricate, world-class electronic music. He doesn't have the patience. But then he thought of Katsuki's focus during a big game. His strategic mind. His relentless drive for perfection. The surprising depth he'd shown during his confession at the gym door. Oh my God. The pieces were all there, scattered and insane, but they were there. Izuku felt like the world had tilted on its axis. He just bared his soul in a dance for the one person he was trying to hide it from. If Dynamite was Katsuki, then Katsuki had seen it all. He'd seen the anger, the pain, the vulnerability. He'd seen the choreography that was inspired by him. A wave of nausea and dizzying hope washed over him. He needed to know. He needed proof. He got back to the dorm just after midnight, his body aching and his mind spinning. The common room was dark and quiet. Everyone was asleep. He crept upstairs, his heart in his throat. He paused outside Katsuki's door. No light shone from underneath. He was probably asleep. Izuku went into his own room, changed out of his gear, and hid it away. But he couldn't sleep. The question was a drumbeat in his skull. Is Kaken Dynamite? He had to know. He needed to see that tattoo. It was an insane, invasive plan. But he was past caring. He tiptoed back out into the hallway and stood outside Katsuki's door again. He listened. Nothing. Gently, slowly, he turned the knob. It was unlocked. Of course it was. Katsuki had never been afraid of anything. He pushed the door open just a crack, enough to slip inside. The room was dark, lit only by the moonlight filtering through the blinds. Katsuki was asleep on his stomach, one arm thrown over his head, the other tucked under his pillow. His sheets were tangled around his waist, and his bare back was exposed. Izuku's breath caught. This was it. He crept closer, his socks silent on the floor. His heart was pounding so loudly he was sure it would wake the entire building. He could see the familiar, powerful lines of Katsuki's shoulders, the dip of his spine. And there, just above the waistband of his black boxer briefs, on the left side of his lower back, was the tattoo. Izuku leaned in, his eyes straining in the dim light. It wasn't just an explosion. It was a stylized, geometric explosion, and woven through the lines of the blast were intricate, sharp-edged musical notes. And underneath, in sleek, bold kanji, was the name, Dynamite. The world stopped. Izuku stumbled back, his hand flying to his mouth to stifle a gasp. It was true. It was all true. Katsuki Bakugu was Dynamite. The angry football player was the brilliant, enigmatic music producer. The boy who called his dancing cowardly was the man who had commissioned it, who had praised its vulnerability. The pieces slammed together with the force of a freight train. The weird hours. The secrecy. The frustration. Katsuki hadn't just been angry about Izuku's secret, he'd been living a massive one of his own. They'd been circling each other, two satellites of secret artistry, never knowing they were in the same orbit. Izuku backed out of the room, pulling the door shut silently behind him. He leaned against the wall in the hallway, his legs shaking, his mind reeling. Katsuki had seen the video. He'd seen the dance. He'd seen the emotion poured into it. And he'd run. He'd packed up his things and fled the warehouse as if the devil himself were on his tail. But was he disgusted? Angry? Or was he scared? Izuku thought of the look of shock on Dynamite's, on Katsuki's face. It hadn't looked like anger. It had looked like realization. Panic. He knows, Izuku thought, the truth dawning on him with terrifying clarity. He knows it's me. He saw my back. He recognized my scar. The @Deku_ account was anonymous, but it wasn't headless. He'd never shown his face, but he'd shown his body. His build, his hair, his freckles, and the distinct, star-shaped scar on his left shoulder blade from a childhood accident with a fallen shelf of All Might figures. A scar Katsuki had been there for. A scar he'd made fun of for weeks. A scar that would have been clearly visible when his sweat-soaked hoodie clung to his back during that spin. Katsuki now knew that @Deku_ was Izuku. But he had no idea that Izuku had just discovered that Dynamite was Katsuki. The power dynamic had just violently, irrevocably shifted. Izuku was holding a live bomb, and Katsuki was sleeping obliviously on the other side of the wall, completely unaware that his own secret had been exposed. The game was far from over. But now, Izuku was the one holding all the cards. And he had no idea what to do next. Chapter 8. The Confrontation and the Crumbling Mask. Chapter text. The text was a declaration of war. A carefully laid trap. Izuku's fingers trembled only slightly as he typed it, the black card with the scrawled number feeling like a loaded weapon in his hand. Izuku, to Dynamite's number we need to talk. About the project. The usual warehouse. Tonight. 11 p.m. He hit send before he could lose his nerve. He was @Deku_ right now, not Izuku. He was the one in control. He was the one who knew. The reply was almost instantaneous. Typical Katsuki. No patience. Dynamite. Why? The edit isn't done. Izuku, creative differences. It's important. He held his breath. Would he take the bait? Would the arrogant, controlling part of Dynamite, the part that was so quintessentially Kaken, be unable to resist a challenge to his creative vision? The 3 dots appeared, bounced, disappeared. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Dynamite, fine. Don't waste my time. Izuku let out a shaky breath, a thrill of victory and sheer terror shooting through him. The hook was set. The warehouse felt different tonight. The anticipation was a physical presence, thick and heavy in the air. Izuku stood in the same pool of light, but this time he wasn't the performer. He was the hunter. He was dressed in his full @Deku_ gear, the helmet hiding his face, his body thrumming with nervous energy. Right on time, the roar of a motorcycle cut through the silence. The headlight beam sliced through the darkness before the engine killed, and Dynamite swung off the bike. He was all aggressive lines and impatience, his own mask firmly in. Please. This better be good, he grumbled, his voice distorted slightly by the mask as he strode into the light. He stopped a few feet away, crossing his arms. His electric blue eyes scanned Izuku, wary and annoyed. Well, spit it out. What's the problem with the edit? Izuku didn't speak. He just looked at him, taking in the familiar set of his shoulders, the way he stood with his weight shifted slightly to one side, the faint, spicy scent that even the leather and night air couldn't completely disguise. How had he not seen it before? The fuck are you looking at? Dynamite snapped, his irritation growing. Did you drag me out here for a fucking staring contest? Slowly, deliberately, Izuku reached up and unclipped the chain from his wrist, letting it fall to the concrete with a soft, metallic clink. The sound echoed in the vast space. Dynamite's eyes tracked the movement, his posture tightening. What are you doing? Izuku took a step forward. Dynamite took an involuntary step back. Hey, back the fuck up, dancer. We're here to talk, not have a fucking dance-off. Another step forward. Another step back. They were circling each other now, a predator and another predator, though only one of them knew it yet. I figured it out, Izuku said, his voice low and steady through the helmet's modulator. He was using @Deku_'s voice, the deeper, more confident one he put on for the camera. Figured what out? Dynamite's voice was a dangerous growl, but there was a thread of something else underneath. The creative difference, Izuku said, closing the distance between them. He was now within arm's reach. He could see the faint pulse in Dynamite's throat. It's not about the edit. It's about the artist. He moved. It was faster than Dynamite could react. One moment, Izuku was standing there. The next, he had Dynamite spun around and slammed back against a rusted steel support beam. He pinned him there with a forearm across his chest, the strength in his dancer's frame surprisingly formidable. What the hell? Dynamite struggled, his eyes wide with shock and fury behind his mask. Get the fuck off me. No, Izuku said, his voice cold. He brought his other hand up, not to hit, but to the side of Dynamite's head. I think I've waited long enough for the truth. His fingers found the edge of the black mask. Dynamite froze, his struggles ceasing instantly. His breath hitched, a ragged, panicked sound. Don't, he whispered, the word barely audible, stripped of all its usual bravado. It was a plea. It was Katsuki's voice, raw and unmasked. But it was too late. Izuku hooked his fingers under the fabric and yanked it down. The mask came away, revealing a face Izuku had known his entire life. Katsuki Bakuga's face, pale and stunned in the harsh light, his spiky hair mussed, his sharp features etched with a fear Izuku had never seen there before. His red eyes were wide, pupils dilated, fixed on Izuku's helmeted face. For a long, breathless moment, they just stared at each other. The only sound was their ragged breathing. Then, Izuku reached up with his free hand. He didn't break eye contact with Katsuki as he unclasped his own helmet and pulled it off. His green curls tumbled out, damp with sweat. The warehouse air felt cool on his flushed skin. He watched as Katsuki's eyes, Dynamite's eyes, took in his face, his freckles, his determined, angry expression. There was no shock there. Only a grim, resigned confirmation. Kaken, Izuku said, his voice quiet, devoid of the modulator, shaking with a mixture of triumph and hurt. Katsuki flinched at the name, as if it were a physical blow. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. The evidence was literally in Izuku's hands. You, Katsuki breathed, his voice hoarse. It was you. All this time. And it was you, Izuku shot back, his forearms still pressing against Katsuki's chest, holding him in place. You called my dancing cowardly. You called it a calculated fucking performance. You stood there and judged me while you were hiding behind a mask yourself. The anger he'd been bottling up for weeks, the hurt, the confusion, it all came pouring out. How long? Izuku demanded, his voice rising. How long have you been Dynamite? Katsuki's jaw tightened. He looked away, unable to meet Izuku's intense gaze. A while, he muttered. And you knew? You knew it was me at the shoot? When you saw my back? My scar? Katsuki's eyes squeezed shut for a second. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Yeah, he admitted, the word ripped from him. I knew. And you ran, Izuku accused, the hurt bleeding through the anger. You saw me, you saw what I poured into that dance, and you just packed up your shit and ran away. But were you disgusted? Was it not good enough for the great Dynamite? No. Katsuki's eyes snapped open, blazing with a sudden, fierce intensity. It was too good, you fucking idiot. It was. He struggled for the words, his face a war of conflicting emotions. I saw your fucking scar and it was like the whole world dropped out from under me. It was you. This incredible, powerful, beautiful thing I'd been watching for months. It was you. And the way you danced to my track, it was like you were inside my fucking head. You took my anger, my everything, and you made it into that. And I couldn't handle it. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and shocking. Izuku's grip on him loosened slightly, his anger momentarily stunned into silence. Beautiful. He'd said it was beautiful. Katsuki took advantage of the loosened hold. He didn't shove Izuku away. Instead, his own hands came up, gripping Izuku's shoulders, holding him just as tightly. Why didn't you tell me? Katsuki demanded, his voice low and urgent. All those times I was being a dick about your secret project, why didn't you just tell me it was you? Why didn't you? Izuku countered, his own voice cracking. You had this whole other life, this incredible talent, and you never said a word. You let me think you hated what I was doing. Because I didn't want to share you. Katsuki burst out, the words explosive and honest in a way that left them both breathless. He looked just as shocked as Izuku felt that he'd said it. His grip on Izuku's shoulders tightened. At Deku underscores, he was this untouchable thing. This fantasy. And you were just my Deku. And if they were the same person, then that meant everyone got to see that part of you. That amazing, confident, sexy part of you that I thought was just for me to know about. The admission was so profoundly, stupidly Katsuki that Izuku felt the last of his anger dissolve, leaving behind a dizzying, aching wonder. They were both panting, chests heaving, holding onto each other in the middle of the crumbling warehouse. The masks were off. The lies were gone. There was nothing left between them but the terrifying, exhilarating truth. Izuku became acutely aware of their position. His body pressed against Katsuki's, pinning him to the beam. Katsuki's hands on his shoulders, holding him just as captive. The heat of him. The scent of him. The way his red eyes were dark with an emotion that was no longer anger, but something much more dangerous. Kaken, Izuku whispered, his voice barely a breath. Katsuki's eyes dropped to Izuku's lips. Izuku, he murmured back, and the sound of his real name on Katsuki's lips, spoken like that, was Izuku's undoing. The space between them vanished. Izuku didn't know who moved first. Maybe they both did, but suddenly his mouth was on Katsuki's, and Katsuki's was on his. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was weeks of pent-up frustration, of longing, of secrets and lies and anger, all exploding into this one, desperate, perfect point of contact. Katsuki's lips were surprisingly soft, but the kiss was all heat and hunger. Izuku's hands came up to tangle in Katsuki's hair, pulling him closer, while Katsuki's arms slid around Izuku's waist, crushing him against his body. It was messy and desperate and perfect. It tasted like truth and want and the faint, lingering sweetness of strawberry milk. When they finally broke apart, gasping for air, they didn't go far. Their foreheads rested together, their breaths mingling in the cool air. "You're a fucking idiot," Katsuki whispered, but there was no heat in it. Only awe. "You're a hypocrite," Izuku whispered back, a giddy, disbelieving laugh bubbling up in his chest. "Yeah," Katsuki agreed. And then he was kissing him again, slower this time, deeper, a promise and an apology and a beginning all rolled into one. In the silent, dusty warehouse, surrounded by the ghosts of their secrets, they finally found each other. Chapter 9. The Secret and the Suspicions. Chapter text. 2 months. 2 months of stolen moments and secret smiles. 2 months of a dual life more complex and exhilarating than any secret identity Izuku had ever maintained. By day, he was Izuku Midoriya, university student, friend, and, to the keen observer, someone who seemed to be constantly fighting a losing battle with a blush. Katsuki's open hostility had been replaced by a gruff, possessive proximity that confused everyone else and sent Izuku's heart into arrhythmia. He'd sit next to Izuku in lectures, his knee pressed against Izuku's under the table. He'd shove a coffee into his hand every morning, muttering, "Drink it, you look dead," before stomping away. He'd drag Izuku into empty classrooms for studying that involved very little studying and a lot of being pressed against doors and kissed until Izuku was dizzy. It was domestic and thrilling and utterly, completely theirs. By night, he was at Deku _internet sensation, and, in a twist that still made his head spin, the confirmed, semi-public collaborator and friend of Dynamite. The video they'd created had taken the internet by storm. It was hailed as a brutal, beautiful masterpiece. The collaboration was the stuff of legend. And the mystery only deepened when Dynamite, notoriously reclusive, began interacting with at Deku _online. It started small. Dynamite would quote tweet at Deku _'s behind-the-scenes clips with a single, cryptic word, adequate. Or passable. Then it escalated. Blurry, dark photos taken from behind a console at a club, captioned, "Dancers here. Music's too shit for him though." A picture of 2 motorcycles parked side by side outside a diner at 2 a.m., the caption just a single motorcycle emoji. The internet, as it does, lost its collective mind. User 8474. Are we all just ignoring the fact that Dynamite is basically cyber-courting Deku? Deku for life is not courting us, a meeting of minds of artistic soulmates. Lilac dreams. They went to a diner together. At 2 a.m. That's a date. Catchins_biceps. But like, what does Dynamite even look like? Is he hot? Is he worthy of our dance king? Explodey_murder_. Deku could do better. Probably has a face like a squashed tomato. Izuku would read the comments curled up in Katsuki's bed, because of course that was a thing now, and laugh until he cried. Katsuki would grumble and try to snatch the phone away, his ears turning pink. They're fucking morons, he'd mutter, burying his face in Izuku's neck. Says the guy who posted a picture of our bikes. Izuku would tease, running his fingers through Katsuki's surprisingly soft hair. Shut up. It was aesthetically pleasing. Their secret was a carefully guarded fortress. The @Deku_ and Dynamite interactions were carefully curated to never reveal faces or locations. Their real-life relationship was hidden in plain sight, passed off as a sudden, intense rekindling of their childhood friendship. The group was baffled but mostly relieved that the constant tension had finally snapped into whatever this was. But 2 months of such a high-wire act was bound to have close calls. It was a lazy Sunday. The entire group was strewn across the common room, basking in the post-brunch coma. Izuku was half asleep with his head in Katsuki's lap, something that had become shockingly normal. Katsuki had one hand resting possessively on Izuku's shoulder, absently tracing circles on his skin with his thumb, while the other hand scrolled through his phone. It was domestic, peaceful. Izuku was drifting, lulled by the sound of Kaminari and Siro arguing over a video game and the soft chatter of the girls. Then Mina gasped, sitting bolt upright. Oh, God. Everyone jumped. Izuku's eyes flew open. What is it? Achiko asked, leaning over. It's Dynamite. Mina screeched, holding up her phone. He just posted a story. A video. Izuku's blood ran cold. He subtly tried to sit up, but Katsuki's hand on his shoulder kept him in place, though his thumb had stopped moving. So, Shinso drawled. He posts stuff. Not like this. Mina said, her eyes wide as saucers. It's a video from his studio. And you can hear someone in the background. And they're humming. Izuku's heart stopped. He remembered that 2 nights ago, he'd been waiting for Katsuki to finish a mix, lounging on the studio couch, humming the melody of the new track they were working on. Katsuki had told him to shut up, but he'd been smiling. Let me see, Katsuki said, his voice a low growl. He held out his hand. Mina handed him the phone. Katsuki watched the short video, his face an impressively neutral mask. Izuku held his breath. The video was from Katsuki's point of view, focused on the mixing console. But in the background, clear as day, someone was humming a distinct, unreleased Dynamite melody. Katsuki grunted, handing the phone back. So he's working with a vocalist. Big fucking deal. But who? Mina pressed, taking the phone back and staring at it as if it held the secrets of the universe. It sounds familiar. All humming sounds the same, Katsuki said dismissively, resuming his thumb circles on Izuku's shoulder. The motion was meant to be casual, but Izuku could feel the tension in his fingers. No, it doesn't, Achiko said, taking the phone from Mina. She listened, her brow furrowed in concentration. It does sound familiar, kinda like. Her eyes drifted across the room, landing on Izuku. Izuku felt his entire body break out in a cold sweat. He tried to look innocent, which probably made him look incredibly guilty. Achiko's eyes widened. Deku, you hum that same tune all the time when you're studying. The room went silent. All eyes turned to Izuku. Izuku's brain short-circuited. I do. Yeah, Achiko said, getting excited. You were humming it just the other day in calculus. Don't you remember? I asked you what it was and you said it was just something stuck in your head. Katsuki's hand had gone still again. Izuku could feel the lethal energy radiating off him. It's a catchy tune, Izuku squeaked, his voice an octave too high. I must have heard it online somewhere. But it's unreleased. Mina cried, latching onto the mystery with the tenacity of a bloodhound. How could you have heard it? Unless, her eyes darted between Izuku and the phone, then to Katsuki, whose face was like stone. A slow, dawning, horrifically incorrect realization spread across her face. Oh, God. What? Kaminari asked, confused. What is it? Mina pointed a dramatic finger at Katsuki. You. Katsuki raised an eyebrow. Me what, Pinky? You're the one humming, she declared. You're always listening to music. You have those fancy headphones. You were humming that tune the other day in the kitchen. I heard you. Izuku almost passed out from relief. Thank God for Mina's spectacularly misguided leaps of logic. Katsuki looked utterly baffled. The fuck I was? You were. Mina insisted. You were making curry and you were humming. I thought it was weird because you never hum. Bakugu, are you working with dynamite? Is that your secret project? Are you the mysterious hummer? The entire group stared at Katsuki, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning belief. Katsuki, to his credit, didn't miss a beat. He scowled, a deep, authentic-looking scowl. Don't be fucking ridiculous. I don't hum. And I sure as hell don't work with that masked freak. He looked down at Izuku, his red eyes glinting with a private joke. Right, Deku? Izuku nodded frantically. Right. Kaken would never hum. He's more of a big grunter. The tension broke. The group laughed, Mina's theory collapsing under the weight of its own absurdity. The conversation moved on to other things. But later that night, alone in Katsuki's room, Izuku collapsed onto the bed in a heap of nervous exhaustion. That was too close. Katsuki locked the door and leaned against it, a smirk playing on his lips. Kaken would never hum, he mocked, his voice a low imitation of Izuku's. You're a shitty liar. You're one to talk, Mr. I don't work with that masked freak, Izuku shot back, throwing a pillow at him. Katsuki caught the pillow and tossed it aside, stalking towards the bed. He's a freak. A control freak. He crawled onto the bed, hovering over Izuku. But his taste in collaborators is passable. Izuku laughed, pulling him down for a kiss. Adequate, he corrected against his lips. Shut up, nerd, Katsuki murmured, kissing him deeply. As they lay tangled together later, Izuku traced the dynamite tattoo on Katsuki's lower back. They're getting closer, Kaken. Achiko recognized my humming. Katsuki sighed, pulling him closer. I know. We can't keep doing this forever. The words hung in the air. They both knew it was true. The secrets were becoming too big, too intertwined. The world was closing in. But for now, in the dark, with Katsuki's arms around him, Izuku pushed the thought away. They had tonight. They had this. And that, for now, was enough. Chapter 10. The Reveal and the Rooftop Rendezvous. Chapter text. The close call with the humming video was a wake-up call. The web of lies was getting too tangled, the near misses too frequent. They were living on borrowed time, and both of them knew it. The decision was made not with a grand discussion, but with a shared, silent understanding that passed between them over breakfast. Katsuki shoved a plate of perfectly crispy bacon towards Izuku. Izuku nudged the carton of strawberry milk back across the table. Their eyes met, and a conversation happened without a single word. We can't do this anymore. I know. Today. It was terrifying. And it was a relief. They decided on a low-key approach. No big announcement. They just stop hiding. Let the group piece it together. It was the most Katsuki-like way to do it. Let the idiots figure it out themselves. The opportunity presented itself that afternoon. The group was gathered in the common room, a familiar scene of comfortable chaos. Ida was lecturing a half-asleep Kaminari on proper posture for gaming, Mina and Achiko were painting each other's nails a truly alarming shade of green, and Shoto was methodically eating a bag of chips, one every 30 seconds. Katsuki was slouched on the couch, and Izuku, feeling bold, walked over and simply sat down. Not on the other end of the couch. Right next to him. Their thighs pressed together. Katsuki didn't shove him away. He didn't even grunt. He just shifted slightly, his arm coming up to rest along the back of the couch, his fingers brushing against Izuku's shoulder. The effect was instantaneous. Achiko's nail polish brush froze midair. Mina's mouth dropped open. Ida's lecture trailed off. Kaminari, sensing the shift in atmosphere, actually paused his game. Shoto stopped chewing his chip. The common room was utterly, completely silent. Izuku's heart was hammering. He kept his eyes fixed on the TV, where a cartoon was playing to no one. Katsuki, the absolute bastard, broke the silence. "The fuck are you all looking at?" he growled, not moving his arm. "You," Achiko whispered, her eyes wide. "What? Touching?" "No shit," Katsuki said, his fingers curling possessively into the fabric of Izuku's hoodie. "It's my couch. I can touch whoever I want on my couch." "But it's Deku," Kaminari said, as if this explained everything. "And?" Katsuki's tone was a challenge. "And you usually yell at him if he sits within a 5-foot radius of you," Siro pointed out, leaning forward from his armchair. "Teeth, changed my mind." Another beat of stunned silence. Then, Mina slowly, deliberately, put down her nail polish. Phil, what is happening right now?" Izuku finally chanced to look at her. He offered a small, nervous smile. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Mina said, her voice rising with excitement, "that Bakugu is letting you cuddle him on the couch like a giant, grumpy teddy bear. I mean that he's been making you coffee every morning. I mean that I saw him smile at you in the hallway yesterday and I thought I was having a stroke." "It wasn't a smile," Katsuki muttered, his ears turning pink. "It was a twitch." "It was a smile," Achiko insisted, clapping her hands together. "Oh my god. Are you too, are you?" She couldn't even finish the sentence, she was so excited. Izuku took a deep breath. This was it. He looked at Katsuki, who gave a barely perceptible nod. "Yeah," Izuku said, his voice a little shaky but clear. "We are." The common room exploded. "I knew it." Mina shrieked, launching herself across the room to tackle them both in a hug. "I knew there was a reason you stopped trying to murder each other every day. This is highly irregular but ultimately joyous news," Ida announced, chopping the air with tears in his eyes. "My heartfelt congratulations to you both." "Dude. Bro. Manly," Kirishima yelled, pumping his fist. "I knew you had a soft spot for him." "How long?" Achiko demanded, her eyes sparkling. "How long has this been going on?" "A while," Katsuki grumbled, trying and failing to extricate himself from Mina's octopus-like grip. 2 months, Izuku admitted at the same time. 2 months. The chorus was deafening. "You've been together for 2 months and you didn't tell us?" Kaminari cried, looking betrayed. "We were working things out," Izuku said lamely. Shoto, who had been silently observing the entire spectacle, finally spoke. "So the intense staring, the shared food, the mysterious disappearances into empty classrooms, that was all dating?" "Yes, Shoto," Izuku said, blushing furiously. "That was dating." Shoto considered this for a moment. It makes sense." He went back to his chips. The group descended upon them, a whirlwind of questions, congratulations, and good-natured teasing. It was overwhelming and loud and perfect. Through it all, Katsuki's arms stayed firmly around Izuku's shoulders, a silent, steady anchor. The @Deku_dynamite reveal, by contrast, was a masterclass in public misdirection. With their real-life relationship out in the open, they leaned into their online personas with a new, playful boldness. It started with Dynamite posting a picture of 2 coffee cups on a studio console. One black, one with a ridiculous amount of whipped cream and sprinkles. The caption, "His taste is fucking disgusting." @Deca_quote tweeted it with, "Says the man who puts hot sauce on his ice cream." Nauseated face. The internet howled. The Decamite shippers, a faction that had grown exponentially, declared it a public declaration of love. Then, @Deca_ posted a blurry, boomerang video of a hand, Dynamite's hand, with its distinctive tattoos, tapping impatiently on a table. The caption, "Producer is impatient today." Sleeping face. Dynamite replied, dancer is late. Again. Their banter was constant, a public performance that was, ironically, the most honest thing about their online presence. They were giving the people what they wanted. A glimpse into the legendary collaboration, a will-they-won't-they dynamic that drove engagement through the roof. What the internet didn't see was the reality behind the tweets. The studio was often Katsuki's dorm room, the expensive console replaced by his laptop and headphones. The impatient tapping was usually Katsuki prodding Izuku to stop scrolling through memes and focus. The disgusting coffee was the one Katsuki made for Izuku every single morning. They'd be curled up on Katsuki's bed, supposedly working, when Katsuki would get an idea. Hey nerd, he'd say, nudging Izuku with his foot. Post something. About what? I don't know. Hair. Or something. Your hair. It's aesthetically pleasing. The extras will love it. Now take a picture. Izuku would laugh and snap a picture of Katsuki's hand, or the back of his head, and they'd craft a tweet together, bickering over the caption until they were both laughing too hard to type. It was a game. A secret they shared with the entire world, who had no idea that the two mysterious online figures they were shipping were, in reality, two idiots in love, tangled up in bedsheets and laughing at their own inside jokes. The best part was that their friends, now privy to the real relationship, were completely oblivious to the online one. They'd see the tweets and videos and comment on them with no idea of the truth. Oh my god, Dynamite posted again, Mina would sigh, scrolling through her phone in the common room. He's so obsessed with Deku. It's kinda pathetic. Izuku, who was currently using Katsuki's thigh as a pillow, would make a choked sound. Teach, Katsuki would grunt from above him, not looking up from his textbook. Dude's probably a loser. Right. Mina agreed. I bet he's, like, 40 and lives in his mom's basement. Katsuki's eye would twitch. Izuku would have to bury his face in Katsuki's leg to hide his hysterical laughter. It was the perfect cover. Their friends were so focused on the very real, very shocking news of Katsuki and Izuku dating that the idea of them also being internet superstars was too ludicrous to even consider. The two halves of their lives had finally, improbably, found a way to coexist. The secrets were still there, but now they were shared. And for the first time, Izuku felt like he wasn't just balancing on a tightrope. He was flying. Chapter 11. The Calm and the Countdown. Chapter text. For months. For months of blissful, chaotic, open secrecy. 4 months of Katsuki Bakugo being, for all intents and purposes, a boyfriend. It was still a concept that made Izuku's brain short-circuit on a daily basis. Waking up to Katsuki's grumpy, sleeping face pressed into his neck. The way Katsuki would casually sling an arm around his shoulders when they walked to class, ignoring the stares. The domesticity of doing laundry together, which mostly involved Izuku folding and Katsuki complaining about the shitty, flower-scented detergent. The way Katsuki had, without fanfare, started keeping a box of Izuku's favorite strawberry Pocky in his desk drawer. They fought, of course. They were still Katsuki and Izuku. Their arguments were legendary, explosive things that often ended with someone getting shoved against a wall and kissed within an inch of their life. But it was different now. The anger never festered. It was a flash fire, hot and bright, and then it was over, leaving behind a deeper understanding. Their friends had acclimated to the new reality with surprising ease. It helped that the change, while seismic, made a bizarre kind of sense. They were still them. Katsuki was still a rage-filled Pomeranian, and Izuku was still a sweet, anxious nerd. They just now belonged to each other. Meanwhile, the @Deku_ and Dynamite phenomenon continued to soar. Their playful, antagonistic online relationship was the stuff of internet legend. The Dekumite tag routinely trended worldwide. Conspiracy theories about their identities reached new levels of absurdity. The demand for a face reveal was a constant, roaring drumbeat in their comments. Izuku watched it all from the comfortable perch of his dual life, a secret smile always on his lips. He and Katsuki had built a fragile, perfect equilibrium. Their real relationship was out in the open with their friends, and their online personas were a shared game they played with the world. But Izuku was getting restless. He was proud of it. Deku. It was a part of him he'd built from the ground up. And he was in love with Katsuki, with every part of him, including the brilliant, creative force that was dynamite. The desire to merge those two worlds, to finally stand together without masks, began to itch under his skin. He brought it up one night, curled against Katsuki's side in his bed. The comments are getting pretty intense about a face reveal. Katsuki, who was scrolling through sound samples on his laptop, grunted. They're always intense. They're fucking animals. I know, but Izuku traced the explosion tattoo on Katsuki's forearm. Don't you ever want to? Just be done with the mystery? Katsuki stopped scrolling. He looked down at Izuku, his red eyes serious. You know what happens if we do that? It's not just us anymore. It's managers and brands and fucking paparazzi. It's a circus. This, he gestured between them, to the quiet room. This goes away. I know, Izuku said softly. But wouldn't it be nice to not have to hide? To just create together? As us. Katsuki was quiet for a long time. He wasn't a man who feared much, but Izuku knew he feared this, the loss of control, the invasion of their hard-won peace. We'll think about it, he said finally, a major concession. He went back to his laptop, but his brow was furrowed in thought. The idea was planted, and Izuku, being Izuku, began to nurture it. The plan for the group trip to the amusement park, UA Lands, was born out of Mina's relentless energy and Ida's need to schedule fun with military precision. It was a perfect, sunny day, and the entire crew descended upon the park like a colorful, chaotic whirlwind. And for the first time, Izuku and Katsuki got to experience it as a couple out in the open. It was a revelation. Katsuki, to everyone's shock, was a monster at the carnival games. He won a grotesquely large All-Might plushie on the ring toss on his first try by calculating the angle and velocity with terrifying precision. He handed it to Izuku without a word, his ears pink. For me? Izuku had asked, beaming. Who the fuck else would I win a shitty All-Might for? Katsuki had grumbled. But he'd looked pleased. They dragged a protesting Shoto onto every spinning ride they could find, just to watch his usually blank face contort in confusion and mild nausea. They ate terrible, overpriced park food, and Katsuki actually tried a bite of Izuku's rainbow-colored cotton candy, immediately declaring it disgusting, sugary air. They stood in line for the biggest, most terrifying roller coaster, the Howitzer Impact, for 45 minutes. As they neared the front, Ochiko started to look green. I don't know about this, guys, she whispered, clutching Siro's arm. It'll be fine, Kirishima said, though he looked a little pale himself. Katsuki rolled his eyes. It's a fucking roller coaster, round face. It's designed not to kill you. He looked at Izuku, who was practically vibrating with excitement. You ready, nerd? Born ready. Izuku grinned, echoing his @Deku_ persona. When they got on the ride, Katsuki insisted on the front car. As the safety bar clicked into place, he reached over and laced his fingers through Izuku's. Izuku's heart leapt into his throat. The climb was agonizingly slow. The world spread out below them, the park shrinking to the size of a model. Izuku's grip on Katsuki's hand tightened. Don't you fucking dare puke on me, Katsuki said, but his thumb was stroking the back of Izuku's hand. Then the drop. The world vanished into a scream of wind and acceleration. Izuku's stomach tried to exit through his feet. He heard himself yelling, a mix of terror and pure joy. Next to him, Katsuki wasn't screaming. He was laughing, a wild, free, exhilarated sound that was swallowed by the roar of the ride. It was the most incredible feeling Izuku had ever experienced. The thrill of the fall, the weightlessness, and the solid, warm anchor of Katsuki's hand in his. When the ride slammed to a halt, they were both breathless and grinning like idiots. Again? Katsuki asked, his eyes sparkling. Again, Izuku agreed. As they stumbled off the ride, legs wobbly, the rest of their group looked like they'd seen a ghost. Dude, Kaminari breathed. Bakugu. You laughed. I heard it. I did not. Katsuki snapped, the grin instantly vanishing from his face. You did. Mina cried. You look like you were having fun. It was terrifying. Shut up. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they found a quieter spot near a fountain to rest. The group was scattered. Ida was lecturing a vendor about the proper way to store fried dough, Kirishima and Kaminari were trying to win another prize, and the others were simply collapsed on benches. Izuku and Katsuki found a bench slightly away from the others. Izuku was clutching his giant All Might plushie, and Katsuki had his arm around him, idly playing with a curl of his hair. It was peaceful. Perfect. Izuku's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was his manager. The numbers are insane. The engagement on the last post is through the roof. The fans are begging for it, kid. They're ready. Are you? Izuku looked at Katsuki, at the relaxed set of his shoulders, the softness in his eyes as he watched their friends mess around. He looked happy. Truly, unguardedly happy. He thought about the roller coaster. The terrifying, exhilarating fall, and the incredible feeling of flying hand in hand. He made a decision. He opened the @Deku_ account, his fingers flying over the screen. He didn't overthink it. He just typed. Katsuki, feeling him move, looked down. What are you doing? Izuku hit post and showed him the phone. The tweet was simple. @Deku_, you've been asking. We've been listening. This Friday, 8 p.m. A live conversation. No masks. / at the Dynamite. Below the text was a teaser graphic Izuku had designed weeks ago and kept secret. A stark, black background with two silhouettes facing each other. One was unmistakably @Deku_'s helmeted profile. The other was Dynamite's masked one. And both helmets were cracked, with light pouring through the fractures. Katsuki stared at the screen. His body went very still. The casual ease of the day evaporated, replaced by a palpable tension. He looked from the phone to Izuku's face, his expression unreadable. The phone began to vibrate incessantly. Notifications poured in. The tweet was live. In the distance, they heard Mina's phone emit a series of frantic, high-pitched alerts. Oh my god, she screamed, jumping to her feet. Guys, Dynamite. Face reveal. This Friday. The group erupted into excited chatter, clustering around her phone, completely oblivious to the two subjects of the announcement sitting just a few yards away. Katsuki was still silent, his eyes locked on Izuku. Izuku's bravado began to waver. Kaken? I thought we talked about it. Slowly, Katsuki reached out and took the phone from Izuku's trembling hand. He looked at the tweet again. At the cracked helmets. At the finality of it. Then, he did something Izuku didn't expect. A slow, fierce smile spread across his face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile he got before a big game. The smile of someone ready to conquer. You've got a fucking death wish, announcing that without telling me, he said, his voice low. But there was no anger in it. Only a thrilling, terrifying anticipation. He handed the phone back, his fingers brushing Izuku's. Fine. Friday it is. He leaned in, his voice a hot whisper against Izuku's ear. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. He pulled back, his red eyes blazing with a challenge and a promise. The calm was over. The countdown had begun. Chapter 12. The Reveal and the Roaring Aftermath. Chapter text. The 48 hours between the announcement and the scheduled live stream were a special kind of controlled chaos. Their managers, both of them, descended upon them a whirlwind of contracts, damage control plans, and brand deal offers that they immediately shut down. The internet was a frothing maelstrom of speculation. The @Deku_ and Dynamite tags were permanently trending. Through it all, Katsuki was a bastion of terrifying calm. He'd made his decision. There was no going back. Now it was about execution. About winning. They decided to pre-record the reveal. A live stream was too risky. The internet could break and ruin the moment. They needed control. They used the same warehouse where it had all begun, the site of their first collaboration and their first confrontation. The atmosphere was electric, but different. The crew was the same, but they moved with a new reverence. They were about to witness history. Izuku was a nervous wreck. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. What if they hate it? What if they think it's anticlimactic? What if they... Shut up, Katsuki said, his voice calm. He was already in his dynamite gear, minus the mask which he held in his hand. He walked over to Izuku, who was fumbling with the clasp on his helmet, and slapped his hands away. You're fucking it up. His fingers, sure and steady, fastened the clasp for him. Now breathe. I can't, Izuku whispered, his voice echoing inside the helmet. Katsuki's hands came up, gripping the sides of the helmet. He leaned his forehead against the cool visor. Listen to me. You're the most talented, fearless fucker I know. You've done this 1,000 times. It's just another performance. And you're not doing it alone. Izuku took a shuddering breath. The panic receded, soothed by Katsuki's blunt confidence. Okay. Katsuki pulled back and put on his own mask, the dynamite persona snapping into place. Let's go break the internet. The concept was simple, powerful. They would perform a short, synchronized routine to a new, unreleased dynamite track. A track that was softer, more melodic, but no less intense. It was a song about finding someone who sees all the broken pieces of you and doesn't just accept them, but makes them part of the whole. They started back to back, two masked figures in the stark light. The music began, a slow, pulsing beat. Their movements were a mirror, perfectly in sync, sharp, precise, powerful. It was a dance of duality, of two forces moving as one. As the music swelled into the chorus, they turned to face each other. This was the part they'd choreographed together, a push and pull that was both a battle and a courtship. They circled each other, their movements becoming more fluid, more intimate. It was no longer at Deku _Dynamite. It was Izuku and Katsuki, telling their story through motion. Then, the music dropped into the bridge. A haunting, beautiful melody that Katsuki had written the night after their first kiss. This was the moment. On the prearranged beat, their hands went to their own masks. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku's fingers found the release under his chin. He saw, across from him, Katsuki's hands hook under the edge of his own mask. Together, in one fluid, deliberate motion, they removed them. Izuku's helmet came off, his green curls springing free, his face, flushed and serious, revealed to the camera. At the same exact time, Katsuki pulled down his mask, letting it hang around his neck. His spiky blonde hair, his sharp features, his defiant red eyes, all there for the world to see. The crew behind the camera gasped. Someone dropped something with a clatter. But Izuku and Katsuki didn't break character. They held the pose for a breathtaking second, letting the world absorb the shock. They were just two boys, standing in a warehouse, breathing heavily. Then, the music began its final crescendo. Katsuki moved first. He closed the distance between them in two long strides. His hand came up to cup Izuku's jaw, his thumb brushing over his cheekbone. His expression was raw, open, filled with a tenderness he never showed anyone else. Izuku leaned into the touch, his eyes fluttering shut for a second before opening again, shining with unshed tears and pure joy. And then Katsuki kissed him. It wasn't a stage kiss. It was their kiss. Desperate, passionate, and utterly consuming. It was months of secrets and years of longing poured into a single, perfect moment. Izuku's hands came up to fist in Katsuki's jacket, pulling him closer, kissing him back with everything he had. The camera held on them, unwavering. When they finally broke apart, breathless, they were both smiling. Katsuki's was a small, private, triumphant thing. Izuku's was brilliant and blinding. Izuku, riding a wave of giddy, euphoric adrenaline, turned his face towards the camera. He was still wrapped in Katsuki's arms. He stuck his tongue out, a playful, irreverent gesture, and gave a quick, cheeky wink. Then the screen cut to black. It was over. Friday night. 8 p.m. The entire dorm was packed into the common room, the air thick with anticipation. Pizza boxes were stacked on the floor. Everyone was crowded on the couches and floor, phones charged and ready. Izuku and Katsuki were tucked in the back, on the floor leaning against the couch. Izuku's heart was trying to beat its way out of his chest. Katsuki's arm was around him, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on Izuku's shoulder. He was pretending to be bored, but Izuku could feel the tension in his body. "It's starting!" Mina screeched, pointing at the TV where she'd queued up the YouTube live premiere. The black screen was replaced with the familiar @Deku_ logo, which then dissolved into the shot of the two masked figures, back to back. "Here we go," Achiko whispered, clutching a pillow to her chest. The performance began. The group watched, mesmerized. They were silent for once, completely drawn in by the powerful, synchronized dance. "Wow," Kirishima breathed. "They're so in sync. It's like they can read each other's minds." "The choreography is exceptional," Ida noted, his glasses gleaming. "The precision, the emotional resonance." Izuku felt Katsuki's fingers still on his shoulder. This was it. The bridge was coming. On screen, the two figures turned. Their hands went to their masks. The entire room leaned forward. And then, the masks came off. For a full 3 seconds, there was dead, utter silence. The only sound was the music from the TV. The screen showed two faces. Two very, very familiar faces. Mina's jaw unhinged. Achiko's pillow dropped to the floor. Kaminari's phone slipped from his fingers and clattered on the table. Ida's hand froze mid-chop. Shoto's chip halted halfway to his open mouth. They stared, the gears in their brains visibly turning, grinding, and then shattering. On screen, Katsuki cupped Izuku's face and kissed him like the world was ending. The common room erupted. The sound was not human. It was a cacophony of pure, undistilled shock. "What? Oh my God! It's them! Deku? Bakugu? Dynamite is Bakugu? @Deku_ is DKU? Our DKU?" The screaming was deafening. Mina was shaking Achiko, who was shaking Siro. Kaminari was making a sound like a dial-up modem. Kirishima was just repeatedly punching the floor, yelling, "Manly," over and over. On the TV, Izuku stuck his tongue out and winked. The screen went black. The screaming did not stop. It reached a fever pitch. Then, as one, every single head in the room snapped around. 12 pairs of wide, disbelieving eyes locked onto the two figures sitting calmly in the back of the room. Izuku offered a weak, terrified little wave. Katsuki just raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "The fuck are you all yelling about? It's just a video." His words were the match to the gasoline. The room exploded into motion. They were mobbed. A tidal wave of their friends descended upon them, a whirlwind of questions, shouts, and incoherent babbling. "All this time, it was you!" Mina shrieked, grabbing Izuku's face. "You're a dancing god!" Kaminari yelled. "You produce music?" Kirishima roared, shaking Katsuki by the shoulders. "The mystery biker! The hot dancer! It was just DKU!" Achiko cried, looking like her entire worldview had been upended. "The two biggest internet mysteries. And they were in our dorm the whole time." Siro finished, collapsing onto the floor. Ida was trying to restore order, but he was also trying to process the information, his brain seemingly short-circuiting. The statistical probability, the sheer, the secret-keeping. Midoriya. Bakugu. This is a most egregious breach of transparency. Shoto, who had finally finished chewing his chip, looked from the black TV screen to Katsuki. "So the hot sauce on ice cream, that was true?" Through the chaos, through the yelling and the crying and the manly sobbing, Izuku looked at Katsuki. Katsuki was scowling, trying to fend off a tearfully enthusiastic Kirishima, but he met Izuku's gaze. And he winked. Izuku burst out laughing, the sound lost in the roaring chaos. They were surrounded by their friends, their secret was finally, utterly, spectacularly out, and the world was going insane. And it was perfect.